In a world that screams for your attention, a world of flashing lights and endless notifications, of shifting fortunes and sudden storms, there is a quiet, unshakable peace that feels almost like a forgotten myth. We are told to hustle, to want more, to react faster, to feel everything, all at once. The news cycle churns with anxiety. The marketplace roars with greed and fear. And the opinions of others can feel like a relentless tide, threatening to pull us under. Amidst this chaos, we all search for an anchor, a place of refuge where the noise of the world fades into a distant hum. We dream of a sanctuary that cannot be breached, a fortress that stands serene and untouched, no matter how fiercely the battles of life may rage outside its walls. But where can such a fortress be found? We look for it in success, in wealth, in the approval of others, only to find that these are built on sand, vulnerable to the very same winds of change we seek to escape. The real problem, the ancient philosophers would tell us, is not the storm itself, but that we have built our houses in the open, with no protection. The problem is not the world, but our reaction to it, our suffering, our anxiety, our fear, is not caused by events, but by the stories we tell ourselves about those events, by the judgments we attach to them. This is where our true vulnerability lies. And it is also where our greatest power is waiting to be discovered. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing not in a peaceful palace but on the harsh front lines of a brutal war, spoke of such a sanctuary. He called it the Inner Citadel. This is not a place you can travel to, but a space you must build within your own consciousness. It is a fortress constructed not from stone and mortar, but from reason, discipline, and a correct understanding of the world. It is a state of mind so well fortified that external events, no matter how calamitous, lose their power to disturb your tranquility. This journey we are about to embark upon is the discovery of the blueprints for that citadel. It is a deep dive into the ancient art of building an untouchable mind, a practical guide to forging an inner peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. The very first brick, the foundation stone upon which the entire citadel of the mind is built, is a principle so simple in its statement, yet so profound in its application that mastering it alone can revolutionize a life. It is the single most important practice in all of Stoic philosophy, the master key that unlocks the door to tranquility. It is called the Dichotomy of Control. Imagine you are the captain of a ship sailing across a vast, unpredictable ocean. There are things you can command, and things you absolutely cannot. You cannot control the weather. You cannot calm the raging sea. You cannot command the winds to bend to your will. To attempt to do so is not only futile, it is a form of madness. It is to scream at the sky and curse the waves, wasting your energy, breaking your spirit, and accomplishing nothing. But what you can control is the rudder, the sails, and the steady hand guiding the ship. You can control how you navigate the storm. You can choose to steer with skill, with courage, and with wisdom, using the very winds that threaten to destroy you to guide you toward your destination. Your freedom is not found in commanding the ocean, but in commanding your response to it. This is the dichotomy of control. It is the clear, sharp, and unwavering distinction between what is up to us and what is not up to us. The philosopher Epictetus, who perhaps understood this principle better than anyone, was born a slave in the Roman Empire. His body was not his own. He could be bought, sold, beaten, and his leg was deliberately broken by a cruel master, leaving him lame for life. By any external measure, he was the definition of powerlessness, and yet, Epictetus became one of the freest men who ever lived, a teacher of emperors and a beacon of wisdom whose words echo with power nearly 2,000 years later. How? Because he understood that while his master owned his body, His master could never touch his mind. His master could chain his leg, but he could not chain his will, his judgment, or his capacity to choose. Epictetus drew a line in the sand of his own consciousness, a line that separated his inner kingdom from the outer world. Let us draw that same line with absolute clarity. Within your sphere of complete control, within the walls of your inner citadel, are just a few precious things. First, are your judgments, or your opinions, not the events themselves, but what you decide they mean. Being stuck in traffic is an external event. It is not up to you. Judging it as a disaster that will ruin your day is a choice, and that is entirely up to you. Someone speaking ill of you is their action, not yours. Believing that their words diminish your worth is a judgment, a story you tell yourself, and that power of narrative belongs only to you. Second is your will, your intention, what the Stoics called prohairesis. This is your faculty of choice, the inner commander that decides what to pursue and what to avoid. You can choose to pursue virtue, knowledge, and self-improvement. You can choose to avoid pettiness, cruelty, and ignorance. This will is untouchable. No one can force you to desire something you choose not to, or to assent to a belief you hold to be false. Third, flowing from your judgments and your will, are your actions, the conscious choices you make, the duties you perform, the words you speak. These are the output of your inner kingdom. Notice that these are all internal processes. They are the workings of your own mind. Now, consider what lies outside of that line, in the vast, uncontrollable territory of the external world. Essentially, everything else. Your body is not ultimately up to you. You can influence its health with diet and exercise, but you cannot command it to be free from illness, injury, or the inevitable process of aging. Your wealth is not up to you. You can work hard, but a market can crash. A business can fail. Your property can be lost or stolen. Your reputation is not up to you. It exists in the minds of other people, a place you can never truly access or control. You can act with unimpeachable integrity and still be misunderstood or slandered. The actions of other people are most certainly not up to you. You cannot control what your spouse, your children, your boss, or your friends will say or do. And finally, the outcomes of your own actions are not fully up to you. You can shoot an arrow with perfect form, but a sudden gust of wind, an external factor, can divert its course. The Stoics called these external things indifference. This term is often misunderstood as cold or uncaring. It does not mean you shouldn't prefer health over sickness, or wealth over poverty. It means that your moral character, your inner peace, your very happiness as a human being, is and must be indifferent to these things. Your core self-worth is independent of them. Why is this distinction the foundation of all tranquility? Because almost all human suffering, from mild irritation to deep despair, stems from a confusion of these two categories. It comes from trying to control what we cannot, while simultaneously neglecting what we can. When you are consumed with anxiety about what others think of you, you are laying siege to an impregnable fortress, their minds. When you are filled with rage about a delayed flight, you are declaring war on the mechanics of the world. When you hinge your happiness on achieving a specific outcome, a promotion, a victory, a public recognition, you are handing the keys to your inner citadel to chance, to luck, and to the whims of others. You have made yourself a slave to the external. This is not a philosophy of passive resignation. It is not about shrugging your shoulders and saying, "I can't do anything." It is the absolute opposite. It is a strategic doctrine for effective action. It is about the conservation of your most valuable and finite resource, your energy. By refusing to waste a single ounce of emotional or mental energy on things outside your control, You liberate an immense reservoir of power to focus exclusively on what you can do. The modern athlete understands this perfectly. The tennis player cannot control the crowd, the weather, or a bad call from the umpire. If she obsesses over these things, her focus shatters, her muscles tense, and her game collapses. But she can control her footwork, as her breathing, her focus on the ball, their strategy for the next point. By pouring 100% of her attention into these controllable factors, she dramatically increases her chances of success. But more importantly, she achieves a state of professional calm and excellence regardless of the outcome. She has done her part. The rest is not up to her. This is the freedom Epictetus discovered in slavery. He could not control his master, but he could control his choice, not to be internally broken by him. He could not control his broken leg, but he could control his choice to continue teaching and to not let his spirit become lame along with his body. He was free because he placed his good, not in the condition of his body or his station in life, but in the quality of his will and judgment. The one thing no one could take from him. To begin this practice in your own life is simple. For every situation that troubles you, ask yourself the fundamental question: is this within my control? Or outside of it? Is it up to me? Or not up to me? If the answer is that it is outside your control, another person's anger, the state of the economy, a past mistake, then your job is singular to practice acceptance. Not a grudging, resentful acceptance, but a calm, rational understanding that this is the nature of reality. Your second job is to then turn your attention inward and ask, what is in my control right now? My response, my next action, the lesson I can learn from this. If the answer to the first question is that it is within your control, how you speak to your family, whether you exercise today, the effort you put into your work, then your task is clear: to act with courage, with wisdom, and with justice, to do your part, and to do it well. This single principle is the act of drawing the boundaries of your kingdom. It is the declaration of sovereignty over your own mind. It is the realization that while the world may be chaotic, you have a space within you that can be ordered, peaceful, and free. Once this boundary is firmly established, the next task becomes clear. A fortress needs a gatekeeper. You must learn to stand guard at the frontier of your mind and carefully examine every impression, every thought, and every judgment that seeks to enter. You must learn to grant or deny access, to ensure that only truth and reason are allowed inside the walls, while the irrational fears and destructive judgments of the outside world are left behind. Mastering the division of control gives you your territory. Now, you must learn to defend it. If the dichotomy of control is the act of drawing the map of your kingdom, defining its sacred borders, then the art of ascent is the training of the royal guards who patrol its walls and stand vigilant at its only gate. A fortress can have the strongest walls in the world, but if its gatekeeper is asleep, or naive, or easily fooled, then the enemy can walk right in without a fight. Your mind is this fortress, and the gate is your perception, every single moment of your waking life. The outside world sends scouts to this gate. These scouts are called impressions. They are the raw, unfiltered data of existence: a sudden noise on the street, a headline on your phone, an unexpected email from your boss, the look on a loved one's face, a pang of physical pain. The Stoics had a specific word for these impressions: fantasy. It is crucial to understand that these impressions, in their raw form, are neutral. They are neither good nor bad. They are simply messengers arriving at the gate, carrying information. The sound of a car horn is just a vibration in the air. The words in an email are just pixels on a screen. The moment an impression arrives, a second process begins. Almost instantaneously, the mind, based on its habits, its fears, its desire, and its past experiences, proposes an interpretation. It whispers a story, a judgment, about what this impression means. The car horn sounds, and the mind whispers, danger. Your boss's email arrives with the subject line, urgent, and the mind screams, you're in trouble, this is a disaster. You see a photo of your friends having fun without you, and the mind weaves a tale of rejection and loneliness. This proposed interpretation is not the truth. It is only a story. It is an opinion. Now comes the most critical moment in the entire process. The moment where freedom is won or lost. This is the moment of assent. To assent is to agree with the proposed story. It is to look at the terrified interpretation your mind has offered and to say, yes, that is true. It is to give your official approval, your stamp of consent, to the judgment. And the instant you give your assent to a judgment of disaster, or rejection, or fear, the corresponding emotion floods your system. Panic, anger, sadness, anxiety. The gate has been thrown open. The enemy is inside, and the citadel is in chaos. The great insight of the Stoics, and the core of this practice, is that the suffering does not come from the impression. It comes from the assent. It is not the event that harms you, but your judgment about the event, a judgment that you yourself have approved. Epictetus, the slave-turned-master philosopher, gave his students a powerful tool, a shield for the mind, to be used in this critical moment. When a troubling impression arrives at the gate of your mind, you must learn to pause, to hold it at arm's length, and to speak to it directly. You must say, you are just an impression, and not at all the thing you claim to be. This simple phrase is a circuit breaker. It creates a space, a sacred pause, between the initial stimulus and your response. In that space lies your power. Without that pause, we are slaves to our reflexes, puppets dancing on the strings of external events. With that pause, we become architects of our own experience. We become the calm, discerning gatekeeper who does not simply accept every messenger at face value. Let us walk through this with a common modern trial. The traffic jam. You are on your way to an important appointment. The cars ahead grind to a halt. The impression arrives the sight of red brake lights. The feeling of being stationary. It is neutral data. Immediately, the untrained mind proposes a judgment, a story. This is a catastrophe. I'm going to be late. My boss will think I'm unreliable. My whole day is ruined. I have the worst luck. The untrained mind immediately assents. Yes, this is true. This is a disaster. The result, the heart rate climbs. The shoulders tense. The jaw clenches. You grip the steering wheel, curse the other drivers, and flood your body with stress hormones. The external event, being in traffic, is now compounded by a second self-inflicted wound, the internal turmoil of anger and anxiety. The citadel is under siege from within. Now, let's replay the scene with a trained, stoic mind. The cars grind to a halt. The impression arrives red brake lights. The feeling of being stationary. The automatic judgment is proposed. This is a catastrophe. But this time, the gatekeeper is awake. You create the pause. You look at that catastrophic thought and you say to it, you are just an impression, and not at all the thing you claim to be. You refuse to immediately assent. Instead, you perform the primary duty of the gatekeeper. You test the messenger. You separate the raw data from the story. What is the objective fact? The movement of my vehicle has temporarily ceased. That is all that is true. Is it a fact that your day is ruined? No. That is a judgment. Is it a fact that you have the worst luck? No. That is a dramatic story. You refuse to stamp these stories with your approval. Having rejected the false, catastrophic narrative, you are now free to choose a different one. A rational one. I am in a traffic jam. This is outside of my control. Getting angry will not make the cars move. It will only poison my own peace. What is in my control? My breathing. Me postura. The music I listen to. This unexpected pause is an opportunity to practice patience, an opportunity to listen to this audiobook, an opportunity to simply be present. The external situation is identical. The traffic has not moved, but the internal experience has been transformed from one of agitated misery to one of calm acceptance. Your citadel is quiet. You have successfully guarded the gate. This practice extends to every corner of life. You receive a curt email from a colleague. The impression, the words on the screen, the automatic judgment. They dislike me. I've done something wrong. There is a conflict brewing. The practice, pause. You are just an impression. Separate the fact from the story. The fact is the specific words in the email. The story is a narrative of personal animosity you have created. Refuse to assent to the story. Choose a different one. This person is likely busy and being brief. I will respond to the content of the email calmly and professionally. You check your social media feed. The impression, a photo of an acquaintance on a lavish vacation. The automatic judgment, their life is perfect and exciting. And mine is dull and inadequate. I am failing at life. The practice, pause. You are just an impression. Separate the fact from the story. The fact is a curated, filtered image. One single moment out of millions. The story is a fiction of comparison and envy. Refuse to assent. Choose a better story. I hope they are having a good time. Now, let me focus on what is good in my own life. Right here. Right now. This is not a practice of emotional suppression. You do not pretend not to feel. Rather, it is a practice of emotional clarity. It is about refusing to feel bad for reasons that are not true. It is about protecting yourself from the phantoms and shadows created by your own unexamined mind. The world will constantly send impressions to your gate. That will never stop. It will send impressions of loss, of insult, of failure, of sickness. The gatekeeper's job is not to stop the messengers from arriving. That is impossible. The job is to become an expert at discerning which messages are true and which are lies, which should be allowed to enter and which should be politely but firmly turned away at the gates. Once you have become a skilled gatekeeper, capable of maintaining your calm, by pausing and analyzing what comes your way, you can then learn an even more advanced art. You can learn not just to calmly turn away the seemingly negative messengers, but to welcome them, to see the traffic jam, the critical email, the obstacle, not as things to be merely tolerated, but as essential, valuable, and even desirable parts of your path. This requires a radical shift in perception, a move from merely accepting fate to truly loving it. You have learned to stand guard at the gates of your mind. You have learned to create a pause, to analyze the frantic messengers from the outside world, and to refuse your assent to their catastrophic stories. You have learned to maintain your calm in the face of external events by separating objective reality from your subjective judgments. This is the foundation of tranquility. But what if you could go further? What if, instead of merely tolerating the difficult events of life, you could learn to welcome them? What if the gatekeeper, instead of just defending the fortress, learned to see every single arrival, whether dressed in rags or in finery, as a welcome guest bringing a necessary gift? This is the next stage in the construction of an untouchable mind. It is the most demanding and the most liberating of all the Stoic arts. It is summed up in two Latin words, amor fati, a love of fate. This is not a passive resignation. It is not a grim-faced acceptance of the inevitable. It is an active, joyful, and unconditional embrace of everything that life presents to you. It is the conscious decision to say yes to reality, not just the parts we like, but all of it. The traffic jam, the lost promotion, the painful diagnosis, the betrayal by a friend, The Stoic, who practices amor fati, does not simply bear these things. They love them. They see them not as impediments to their life, but as essential ingredients of their life, as necessary and even desirable parts of their unique path. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who centuries later would coin this very phrase, called it his formula for human greatness, that one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. To understand how this is possible, we must turn again to Marcus Aurelius. No one practiced this principle under greater pressure. He was not a philosopher writing in peaceful seclusion. He was an emperor on the bleak northern frontier, holding the line against barbarian invasions. He presided over an empire ravaged by the Antonine Plague, a pandemic that killed millions, including some of his closest advisors. He endured the heartbreaking deaths of at least 8 of his children. He faced a violent insurrection from his most trusted general, Avidus Cassius, a man he had loved like a brother. His life was a testament to loss, duty, and immense pressure. And yet, the pages of his private journal, his meditations, are filled with a profound sense of acceptance and love for this harsh fate. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is the perfect metaphor for amor fati. The untrained mind is a flickering candle, extinguished by the slightest breeze of misfortune. The trained Stoic mind is a roaring bonfire. It does not just resist the log of wood thrown into it, it consumes it, transforming the obstacle into more heat, more light, more power. Every setback, every challenge, every piece of misfortune becomes fuel. Amor fati is the engine behind the powerful modern maxim, "The obstacle is the way." The obstacle is not something standing in the way of your life. The obstacle is your life. The difficult project at work is not an annoyance preventing you from having a peaceful day. It is the very field upon which you get to practice diligence, creativity, and collaboration. The physical injury that prevents you from running is not a curse. It is the perfect opportunity to cultivate patience, to explore other forms of strength, and to appreciate the gift of a healthy body in a way you never did before. The person who insults you is not just an antagonist. They are a sparring partner for your soul, a chance to practice forgiveness, restraint, and the supreme confidence of knowing your self-worth is not in their hands. To love your fate is to see every single one of these moments not as a problem, but as a prescription, as if from a wise physician for the good of your soul. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must accept what happens to you and spin it into your own thread as part of the tapestry of your destiny." How can one possibly love pain, loss, and hardship? The ability to do so rests on a deep trust in the logos, the underlying rational order of the universe. The Stoics believed that the cosmos was not a random collection of chaotic events, but a single, living, interconnected organism. Everything that happens is a part of this vast, intricate web of cause and effect. Nothing is superfluous. The thread in a tapestry cannot complain about its place, for its specific color and position are essential to the beauty of the whole design. Even if the thread itself cannot see the full picture, when you experience a setback, you are that thread. You cannot see the grand design. To practice amor fati is to trust that your specific placement, your specific challenge, is necessary for the integrity of the whole. It is to align your personal will with the will of nature, to stop fighting reality and instead choose to flow with it, to dance with it. It's a radical act of trust. This is the ultimate alchemy of the mind. An alchemist sought to turn lead into gold. The Stoic seeks to turn every event into an opportunity for virtue and a reason for gratitude. You begin to practice this not with the great tragedies, but with the small, daily annoyances. The coffee spills on your shirt. The immediate reaction is frustration. Amor fati asks you to pause and reframe. Can you see this not as a negative, but simply as what is? Can you even find a sliver of good? Perhaps it is a lesson in mindfulness. Perhaps it is a chance to practice your sense of humor. Perhaps it's a reminder that a stained shirt is a trivial problem in the grand scheme of things. A reason to be grateful for your actual problems being so small. You build this muscle with the small weights of daily life. The long line at the grocery store becomes a training ground for patience. The broken appliance becomes a workshop for ingenuity and self-reliance. When you consistently practice turning these small leaden moments into golden opportunities, you build the strength to face the heavier blows of fate, not just with acceptance, but with a kind of welcoming embrace. You start to see life not as a series of things that happen to you, but as a series of things that happen for you, for your growth, for your wisdom, for your strength. The final test, the thought experiment Nietzsche proposed, is that of eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon were to creep into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, "This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every thought, every sigh, all in the same sequence and succession." Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon, or have you lived in such a way that you would answer, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? To live with amor fati is to strive to be able to give that divine answer. It is to build an inner citadel so profound, so complete in its acceptance of reality, that if you were offered the chance to live your exact life over again, with all its triumphs and all its tragedies, you would say yes. 1,000 times yes. Because if you love your fate, nothing can be counted as a mistake. Everything belongs, everything is necessary, and everything is fuel for the fire. To reach this state, however, requires a profound shift in perspective. To love one's small, individual fate, it helps to see it in the context of the vast, impersonal cosmos. It helps to understand just how small and fleeting our time here truly is. And for that, we must turn to the next great Stoic practice, the contemplation of our own mortality. If the love of fate, amor fati, teaches us to embrace everything that happens within our life, there is another great Stoic practice designed to frame the canvas of life itself. It is a tool so powerful it can incinerate trivialities, clarify priorities, and infuse every waking moment with a vibrant sense of purpose. It is perhaps the most famous of all the ancient maxims, a phrase that has echoed through the centuries, whispered by emperors and contemplated by saints. It is memento mori, remember you must die. At first glance, this sounds grim, a morbid fixation on the macabre. Our modern culture is obsessed with denying death, hiding it away, speaking of it in hushed tones, and striving for a perpetual youth that can never last. But the Stoics were not grim. They were realists who understood a profound psychological truth. It is the awareness of death that gives life its flavor, its sweetness, and its urgency. A meal is savored because you know it will end. A journey is precious because you know you will arrive at a destination. Life itself, they argued, is no different. To forget our mortality is to live in a state of sleepwalking, drifting through our days as if we have an infinite supply of them, only to be startled awake at the very end, wondering where all the time went. There is a powerful story from ancient Rome that perfectly illustrates this principle in action. When a victorious general was granted a triumph, the highest honor a Roman could achieve, he would parade through the streets of the city in a golden chariot, dressed like a king, with crowds screaming his name. It was the absolute pinnacle of human success and ego. Yet, by tradition, a slave would stand in the chariot directly behind the triumphant general, leaning forward to whisper periodically in his ear. Amidst the roar of the adoring crowd, the slave would murmur, "Respice post te, ominentis memento, memento mori." Look behind you. Remember that you are a man. Remember, you must eat das Prines. This was not meant to ruin the general's day. It was meant to anchor him. It was a dose of perspective, a shield against hubris, a reminder that even at the peak of glory, he was still a mortal man, subject to the same fate as every person in the cheering crowd. It kept him grounded, and in doing so, it allowed him to truly appreciate the honor without being consumed by it. The philosopher Seneca, one of our richest sources for Stoic thought, wrote extensively on this subject, particularly in his essay on the shortness of life. His central, explosive argument is that our lives are not inherently short, but that we make them short by wasting the time we are given. It is not that we have a short time to live, he wrote, but that we waste a lot of it. He scolds us with a timeless accuracy, pointing out how we guard our money and our property with ferocious jealousy. Yet we allow our time, our only truly non-renewable resource, to be stolen from us by trivial distractions, by pointless obligations, and by the endless demands of others. We live, he says, as though we will live forever, never taking stock of our own fragility. We postpone our own happiness, our own learning, our own living, for a future that is not guaranteed. We are always about to live. The practice of memento mori is the antidote to this state of perpetual postponement. It is the alarm bell that wakes us up and shouts, "The time is now. This moment is all you have. Live it." Think of memento mori as the ultimate clarifying agent. When you hold your anxieties, your grudges, and your ambitions up to the light of your own finitude, most of them simply dissolve. That paralyzing fear of public speaking, of starting your own business, of having a difficult conversation, how significant does it seem when measured against the silence of eternity? That bitter grudge you hold against a family member, that simmering resentment toward a colleague, do you really want to carry that heavy, useless baggage all the way to your deathbed? The constant, nagging desire for more, a bigger house, a more prestigious title, the approval of people you don't even like, the contemplation of death reveals these for what they are: distractions from the real business of living. The late technology pioneer Steve Jobs, in his famous commencement address at Stanford University, gave a powerful modern testament to this ancient principle. After being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." His diagnosis became his slave in the chariot. It was a constant whisper of memento mori that stripped his life down to its essential core. It gave him the clarity to focus on the work that mattered and the people he loved. This is a gift we do not have to wait for a tragic diagnosis to receive. We can give it to ourselves. Right now, we can practice memento mori, not to become morbid, but to become more alive. So how do we practice it? It can be as simple as finding a physical reminder. For centuries, people have used skulls, hourglasses, or special coins placed on their desks not to be grim, but as a tangible anchor to this profound truth. When you glance at it during a moment of stress or distraction, it pulls you back to what is real. It asks you, is what you're doing right now worthy of the precious, unrecoverable moments of your life? It can also be a daily mental exercise. You can begin each day, as the Stoics did, by contemplating that this might be your last, not to create fear, but to inspire action and gratitude. If this were your last day on earth, how would you treat the people you meet? Would you waste time on petty arguments or mindless scrolling? Or would you seek to live with purpose, with kindness, and with courage? The goal is not to perfectly live up to this standard, but to let the question itself guide you toward a better version of yourself, moment by moment. Ultimately, memento mori is not about dying. It is the great secret of living. It is what separates a life of frantic, unconscious busyness from a life of calm, deliberate purpose. It infuses our actions with meaning, our relationships with presence, and our days with a quiet, joyful urgency. It is the dark velvet on which the diamond of the present moment is displayed in all its brilliance. And once we have truly internalized this, once we understand that our time is finite and therefore infinitely precious, it forces us to ask the most important question of all. If this is my one and only life, what is the right way to live it? What is the goal I should be aiming for with these fleeting moments? What is truly worth pursuing? The accumulation of wealth, the experience of pleasure, the attainment of fame? The Stoics would answer with a resounding no. For them, there is only one thing that is truly good, one goal worthy of our precious time, and that is the cultivation of our own character, the pursuit of virtue. The hourglass is emptying. The whisper of memento mori has reminded us that our time is finite and therefore infinitely precious. The love of fate, amor fati, has taught us to embrace the path we are on. With all its twists and turns, these practices clear the ground and give us a sense of urgent, joyful purpose, but they all lead to one central, defining question: what is the purpose? If our time is a gift, how should we use it? If life is a journey, what is the destination? Society offers us 1,000 different maps, 1,000 different true norths. It tells us the goal is wealth, the accumulation of property and possessions. It tells us the goal is pleasure, a life of comfort, entertainment, and the satisfaction of every appetite. It tells us the goal is status, the collection of titles, accolades, and the admiration of the crowd. The Stoics looked at all of these maps and declared them to be forgeries. They lead not to a promised land, but to a wilderness of anxiety, dependency, and dissatisfaction. The Stoics offered a different map, one with a single, unwavering destination, a true north for the soul. They claimed that the sole good in life, the only goal worth pursuing with our precious, fleeting moments, is virtue. This is the most radical and liberating claim in all of Stoic philosophy. To understand it, we must first understand what the Stoics meant by good. For them, the ultimate goal was eudaimonia, a Greek term often translated as happiness, but which means something far deeper. It means human flourishing, a life lived to its full potential, a state of inner excellence and tranquility. The Stoics argued that this state of flourishing could not possibly depend on things outside of our complete control. If your happiness depends on your health, it can be shattered by a single virus. If it depends on your wealth, it can be wiped out by a market crash. If it depends on your reputation, it can be destroyed by a single rumor. These things, health, wealth, reputation, even life itself, are not good. They are indifference. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't care about them. The Stoics called them preferred indifference. It is natural and rational to prefer health to sickness, wealth to poverty, and friendship to loneliness. But they are not the good itself. They are merely the raw material of life. The playing field, the good, the thing that determines whether you are truly flourishing, lies only in how you play the game. It lies in your character, in your choices, in your virtue. Imagine a master archer. Her goal, her good, is to shoot with perfect form, a steady stance, calm breathing, a clear focus, a clean release. This is what she controls. This is virtue. Now, she prefers for the arrow to hit the bullseye. That is the preferred outcome. But once the arrow leaves the bow, it is subject to the wind, a factor outside her control. If a sudden gust blows the arrow off course, has she failed as an archer? The Stoics would say no. If her form was perfect, she succeeded in her task. Her excellence was in the attempt, not the result. Our lives are like this. Our sole good is to act with virtue, Whether those actions lead to wealth, fame, or even success is a preferred, indifferent. Our eudaimonia, our inner flourishing, is secure the moment we act with a virtuous intention, regardless of the outcome. This single insight is the key that unlocks the Citadel gate from the inside, freeing us from the tyranny of results. To make this concrete, the Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues that, when practiced together, encompass a life of excellence. They are the 4 pillars that hold up the roof of the inner citadel. The first is wisdom. This is the master virtue, the knowledge of what is truly good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. It is the ability to navigate the complexities of life with logic, reason, and clarity. It is the archer's understanding of her craft. The second is justice. This is wisdom applied to our social world. It is the recognition that we are all part of a larger human community, and it means acting with fairness, integrity, kindness, and for the common good. It is about treating others honorably and fulfilling our duties to society. The third is courage. This is not just the absence of fear in battle, but the moral and spiritual fortitude to face down any difficulty, pain, loss, anxiety, public opinion in the service of what is right. It is the archer's steady nerve in the face of a roaring crowd or a threatening storm. The fourth is temperance. This is the virtue of self-mastery, of discipline, moderation, and control over our own desires and appetites. It is the archer's disciplined body, her refusal to be swayed by a craving for drink or a desire to show off. For the ultimate embodiment of these virtues, the Stoics looked to one man, Cato the Younger. He was a Roman senator during the dying days of the Republic. As Julius Caesar sought absolute power, Cato became his unshakable opponent. Caesar was a master of preferred indifference. He offered Cato power, wealth, marriage alliances, and safety. Cato refused them all. For him, the sole good was the preservation of justice and the integrity of the Republic. He practiced wisdom by seeing through Caesar's political games. He practiced justice by fighting not for himself, but for the common good of Rome. He practiced temperance through his famously austere lifestyle, training himself to be independent of comfort and luxury. And he practiced courage on a level that became legendary. After Caesar's final victory, Cato found himself cornered in the city of Utica. Caesar offered a pardon. To accept it would have been to endorse tyranny. For Cato, living under a tyrant was not a life worth living. He chose to take his own life. A final, tragic act of ultimate protest, choosing his virtue over the preferred indifferent of life itself. His story is extreme, but its lesson is clear for the true Stoic. Virtue is the only thing that cannot be compromised. This leads to another profound conclusion: virtue is its own reward. We do not act with justice to get a good reputation. The just act is the reward. We do not act with courage to be praised as brave. The feeling of acting with courage is the reward. Marcus Aurelius compared it to an eye demanding payment for seeing, or feet demanding payment for walking. Their function is their reward. Our function, as rational human beings, is to live with virtue. To ask for something more is to misunderstand our very nature. This shifts our entire focus from an external scorecard to an internal one. The world judges us by our titles, our bank accounts, our followers. This is the outer scorecard, and it is fickle and meaningless. The Stoic judges himself by an inner scorecard. At the end of the day, the only questions that matter are: did I act with wisdom? Did I treat others with justice? Did I face today's challenges with courage? Was I temperate in my actions? If you can answer yes, you have had a successful day. Even if you lost money, have faced criticism, or failed to achieve your goal, your inner citadel is secure. Your flourishing is intact. This is the true north. In any situation, when you are faced with a choice, the question is no longer, What will make me happy? Or what will people think? Or what's in it for me? The question becomes, what is the wise thing to do? What is the just thing to do? What is the courageous thing to do? What is the temperate thing to do? This simplifies everything. It provides a clear, unwavering compass to guide you through the fog of life. But virtue is not a theoretical concept to be contemplated in isolation. It is a practical art that must be lived. It is forged in the fires of our daily interactions and responsibilities. It is expressed not in what we think, but in what we do. Therefore, our journey into the Citadel must now turn outward, to explore how we apply this true north to our duties, our actions, and our fundamental connection to the rest of humanity. You have learned to stand guard at the gates of your mind, to love your fate, to remember your mortality, and to aim for virtue as your only true north. These are the foundational pillars of the Inner Citadel. But even with the strongest walls and the most virtuous king, a fortress can feel like a prison if the world inside is all you ever see. Our daily lives create a powerful illusion of perspective. Our own problems, our own dramas, our own ambitions and fears fill our entire field of vision until they seem like the most important things in the universe. A critical comment from a colleague can feel like a devastating attack. A looming deadline can feel like a life or death crisis. We have our faces pressed right up against the canvas of our lives, seeing only the tangled threads and messy brushstrokes, unable to perceive the whole picture. The Stoics knew that to maintain true tranquility, we must periodically step back. We must change our altitude. They developed a powerful meditative practice to do just this. A mental exercise designed to shatter the narrow prison of the ego and offer a glimpse of reality in its true, staggering scale. They called it the view from above. This is not just a metaphor, it is a practical, visual exercise. It is a guided journey you can take at any moment, without moving a single muscle. Let us take that journey now. Begin by closing your eyes and picturing yourself right where you are. In this very moment, see your own body, the room you are in, the building that contains it. Now, begin to zoom out. Like a bird ascending into the sky, see the roof of your building, the street below, the entire neighborhood with its intricate pattern of houses, parks, and cars moving like tiny insects. Go higher still. See the whole of your city spread out beneath you. A sprawling network of light and life. Watch as the city shrinks, becoming just one patch on the vast quilt of the landscape, the fields, rivers, forests, and mountains of your country. Higher, the curve of the earth becomes visible. Continents take shape, their familiar outlines traced against the deep blue of the oceans. The great storms are silent, swirling patterns of white. The divisions we kill for on the ground, the borders between nations are invisible lines on a map, completely absent from the reality of this living sphere. Now, go further. Pull back until the entire earth hangs before you in the blackness of space. A breathtaking, fragile marble of blue, white, and green. This is your home, everything you have ever known, every human being who has ever lived. Every triumph and every tragedy, every war and every love story has taken place on this tiny, suspended stage. But do not stop there. Drift past the moon, a silent, pockmarked companion. Watch as the Earth shrinks to become the pale blue dot that the astronomer Carl Sagan spoke of so eloquently. It becomes just another point of light. Go further, past the fiery disk of the sun, past the orbits of the other planets in our solar system. Our entire cosmic neighborhood becomes a small collection of objects in an immense darkness. Now see our sun itself shrink, becoming just one of 100 billion stars in the swirling, luminous river of the Milky Way galaxy. And then, the final, awe-inspiring step, pull back so far that our entire galaxy becomes just a speck. A single grain of sand on an infinite cosmic beach, surrounded by billions upon billions of other galaxies. each containing billions of other stars, stretching into an emptiness so vast that the human mind can scarcely comprehend it. Hold this perspective for a moment. From this vantage point, where are your problems? Where is the argument you had this morning? Where is your anxiety about next week's presentation? Where is your ambition to get that promotion? Your fear of what others think of you? From the view from above, these things shrink to their true size, vanishingly, beautifully, liberatingly small. They are a speck on a dot suspended in a sunbeam. This is not a philosophical fancy. In recent decades, astronauts have described experiencing this exact psychological shift. They call it the overview effect. Upon seeing the Earth from orbit, they report a sudden, overwhelming sense of connection to the planet and to all of humanity. A dissolution of ego, and a profound understanding of the triviality of our earthbound conflicts. They are, in effect, experiencing the very state of mind that Marcus Aurelius was trying to cultivate 2,000 years ago. Marcus, the most powerful man in the world, was a relentless practitioner of this exercise. He constantly commanded himself in his meditations to think of the whole universe of matter and how small your share. He used it as an antidote to the poison of his own power and importance. It kept him humble. It also gave him a profound acceptance of fate by looking down on the whole sweep of human history as if from a great height. He saw empires rise and fall, generations come and go, fame forgotten as quickly as it was earned. All things are the same. He wrote, familiar in experience, ephemeral in time, sordid in substance. This was not a cynical or depressing thought for him. It was liberating. It meant he did not have to be trapped by the petty dramas of his court or the temporary setbacks of his wars. He could see his own life as one small thread in an immense ancient tapestry, and his only job was to play his small part with virtue. The view from above is a tool with multiple functions. First, it demolishes the ego. It reminds you that you are not the center of the universe. This is not meant to devalue you, but to free you from the heavy burden of self-importance. Second, it cultivates empathy and a sense of connection. What the Stoics called sympathia. When you see all of humanity sharing one fragile home, it becomes harder to feel alienated or to harbor hatred. You see that we are all, quite literally, in this together. Third, it powerfully reinforces the lesson of memento mori. Viewing the eons of cosmic time makes your own lifespan appear as a brief, momentary flash. It urges you not to waste it on things that do not matter. This perspective is a universal solvent for anxiety. The next time you feel overwhelmed, stressed, or angry, take 30 seconds. Close your eyes and zoom out. See your problem in the context of your street, your city, your planet, your galaxy. Ask yourself, from this perspective, how much does this truly matter? The answer is almost always a resounding, very little. This practice is your mental reset button. It is your escape hatch from the cramped, noisy cell of your own ego. By regularly ascending to this vantage point, you cultivate a stable, expansive, and peaceful mind. You learn to see the world with the eyes of a philosopher, with the eyes of the cosmos itself. And from this calm, elevated perspective, you are in a much better position to look at the future, with the understanding that most of your fears are insignificant. You can now turn your attention to the few that might have substance. Not with panic, but with the cool, clear-headed preparedness of a strategist. The view from above shows you the whole battlefield. The next practice will teach you how to prepare for the specific battles that may lie ahead. You stand now within a citadel fortified by powerful ideas. You have a map to virtue, a cosmic perspective on your problems, a love for your fate, and an urgent appreciation for your time. The fortress is strong, but a fortress is only as good as its readiness for an attack. The world we live in is governed by an unshakable law. Things go wrong. Fortune is fickle. Plans fail. People leave. Sickness arrives. This is not pessimism, it is reality. The modern world often teaches us to deal with this reality through a kind of willful blindness and relentless positivity that insists everything will be fine. We are told to chant affirmations, to visualize only success, and to banish all negative thoughts. But this strategy is fragile. A mind fed on a diet of pure positivity is like a houseplant raised in a greenhouse. It is unprepared for the first frost. When reality inevitably strikes, its foundations can shatter. The Stoics proposed a far more robust, more resilient, and deeply counterintuitive strategy. They advocated not for the constant visualization of success, but for the deliberate, periodic visualization of failure, loss, and misfortune. They called this practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of troubles. This is not the same as worrying. Let us be perfectly clear on this distinction, for it is everything. Worrying is emotional, vague, and unproductive. It is the anxious, looping thought. What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? That circles endlessly in the mind, generating panic but no plan. It is poison. Premeditatio malorum, on the other hand, is rational, specific, and strategic. It is the calm, deliberate exercise of sitting down and thinking. Let me imagine, for a few moments, that I have lost my job. What is the very next thing I would do? I would update my resume. I would call these 3 contacts. I would cut these specific expenses. I would have to endure a difficult time, but I would endure it. It is not a horror movie, it is a fire drill. We don't run fire drills because we want or expect a fire. We run them so that if a fire ever does break out, we do not panic. We know where the exits are. Our response becomes calm and automatic because we have rehearsed it. Premeditatio malorum is a fire drill for life. It is the act of a pilot spending hours in a flight simulator practicing how to handle an engine failure. Not because she is a pessimist, but because she intends to be a calm, effective professional when it matters most. Seneca, the great Stoic writer and statesman, was a master of this practice. He was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, but he was acutely aware of how quickly fortune could turn. He regularly practiced what we might call voluntary discomfort. For several days at a time, he would eat the plainest food, wear his roughest clothes, and sleep on a hard floor, all while asking himself, is this the condition I so feared? By deliberately experiencing a simulated version of poverty, he accomplished 2 things. He trained his body and mind to be independent of luxury, and he discovered that the reality of hardship was far less terrifying than the vague fear of it. The monster in the imagination is always worse than the one you face in the light. In addition to this physical practice, he constantly rehearsed misfortune in his mind. He would contemplate the death of his friends, the loss of his property, his own exile. He said that the man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. A blow that is foreseen is a blow that is half-landed. The element of shock is one of adversity's greatest weapons. Premeditation disarms it completely. The practice yields 2 profound and simultaneous benefits. One that strengthens you for the future and one that deepens your appreciation of the present. The first benefit is the cultivation of resilience. By mentally walking through worst-case scenarios, you build psychological calluses. You begin to realize that you are far tougher than you imagine. You could survive the loss of your job. You could endure a period of illness. You could face criticism and rejection. You prove to yourself, in the safe laboratory of your mind, that you have the capacity to endure. This builds a quiet, unshakable confidence that is not dependent on things always going your way. It is the confidence of the sailor who isn't afraid of the storm because he knows how to handle the ship. This is the very essence of becoming anti-fragile, not just resisting shocks, but actually becoming stronger because of them. The second, and perhaps more beautiful, benefit is the cultivation of gratitude. This is the unexpected gift of the practice. When you spend a few minutes genuinely contemplating what your life would be like without a person you love, imagining the empty chair at the table, the silence in the house, and then you open your eyes and they are still there. Your love for them is not just an abstract concept. It becomes a vivid, powerful, and deeply felt emotion when you visualize your life without your current health. And then you feel the simple, glorious fact of your lungs breathing and your heart beating without effort. That health ceases to be something you take for granted. It becomes a treasure. Premeditatio malorum reverses the hedonic treadmill. Instead of constantly needing more to feel happy, it allows you to derive immense joy from what you already possess. It makes the ordinary extraordinary. Your job is not just a job. It is a gift of stability that you are fortunate to have today. Your home is not just a building. It is a sanctuary whose comfort and safety you can appreciate right now. To practice this is simple. Set aside a few moments. Choose something you value. Something you are perhaps afraid of losing: your career, a relationship, your home. Now, calmly and rationally, without emotional drama, imagine that it is gone. Walk through the consequences. What would you do first? What resources could you call upon? How would you begin to rebuild? Acknowledge the difficulty, but also see your own capacity to endure it. Then, return to the present moment. Open your eyes and look upon that very thing you just mentally lost. Feel the surge of appreciation for the fact that it is still here. Let that gratitude fill you. This is not an exercise in morbid obsession. It is a brief, regular mental stretch. A moment of strategic rehearsal and profound appreciation. It is the wisdom of preparing for winter in the warmth of summer. By doing so, you build a citadel that is not just strong, but also filled with a deep and abiding joy for the precious reality of the present moment. You have prepared for the external attack. But often, the most relentless enemy is not outside the walls, but within. It is the voice of our own inner critic, and learning to manage that internal dialogue is the next critical task in securing our peace. You have prepared your fortress for attacks from the outside world. You have learned to anticipate misfortune and to see obstacles as fuel. But what if the greatest threat to your peace is not an external enemy laying siege to the walls, but a saboteur already inside? A traitorous voice that whispers poison in the halls of the citadel itself. For many of us, this is the reality. The most relentless and convincing enemy we will ever face is our own inner critic. It is that voice that replays your mistakes on an endless loop. The one that tells you you're not smart enough, not talented enough, not worthy of the love or success you have. It is the voice of imposter syndrome, the nagging fear that you are a fraud and will soon be exposed. It is the harsh judge that magnifies every flaw and dismisses every accomplishment. A citadel at war with itself cannot stand. And so, one of the most vital Stoic arts is learning to manage this internal dialogue. Not by fighting the critic, but by cultivating a wiser, kinder, and more powerful presence within the benevolent observer. First, we must diagnose the enemy. The inner critic seems like an integral part of you. But from a Stoic perspective, it is not your true self. It is a rogue product of your mind. A malfunctioning pattern of thought born from unexamined impressions and false judgments. The critic does not deal in facts, it deals in distorted stories. It engages in catastrophizing, taking one small mistake and spinning it into a narrative of absolute ruin. It engages in overgeneralization, turning a single failure into the pronouncement that you always fail. It engages in mind reading, confidently asserting that you know the negative thoughts of others. Its logic is weak, but its emotional power is immense, because it speaks with the authority of your own voice. The fundamental error of the critic is that it confuses who you are with what you do. It takes a single performance, a single outcome, a preferred and different, and equates it with your essential worth. When you assent to this equation, you hand the keys of your citadel over to this internal tyrant. The common response is to fight back, to argue with the critic, or to try and suppress it with force. But this is like wrestling with a ghost. You only exhaust yourself and give it more form and substance. The Stoic approach is radically different. It is not one of confrontation, but of calm, detached observation. You must cultivate a part of your mind, your true ruling faculty, that can watch your thoughts without being entangled by them. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. The thoughts of the inner critic are like leaves, twigs, and muddy debris floating by on the current. You are not the debris. You are the witness on the bank. Your job is not to leap into the water and fight with every piece of trash. Your job is to simply notice it. There goes the "you're a failure" thought. There goes the "they all think you're an idiot" thought. By not identifying with the thoughts, by seeing them as transient mental events rather than a reflection of your true self, you rob them of their power. They still float by, but they no longer pull you under. This witnessing presence is the benevolent observer. It is the inner sage, the wise and rational part of you that embodies the four virtues. It has the wisdom to recognize that a thought is just a thought, a neurological event, not an undeniable truth. It has the justice, or more accurately, the fairness and kindness to treat yourself the way you would treat a dear friend who was suffering. You would not berate a friend for making a mistake. You would offer compassion and rational counsel. The benevolent observer does this for you. It has the courage to look at your real flaws and shortcomings without flinching. Not to condemn you, but to understand what can be improved. And it has the temperance to resist being swept away by the emotional drama the critic loves to create, maintaining a state of calm and balance. Let us imagine this in action with a classic case of imposter syndrome. A writer has just published her first novel to great acclaim. The external events are positive, but inside her citadel, the inner critic launches its attack. "You're a fraud." It whispers. "You just got lucky. Everyone will hate your next book. They're going to find out you're a talentless hack." The untrained mind hears this, believes it, and assents to the story. The result is crippling anxiety, writer's block, and an inability to feel any joy in her genuine accomplishment. The preferred indifferent of success has brought no eudaimonia, no flourishing, because the inner world is in chaos. Now, imagine the writer has trained her benevolent observer. The critical thoughts arrive just as before, but this time, the observer is on duty. It notes the thoughts without panic. The fraud narrative has appeared. The fear of the future story is present. It does not argue. It simply applies reason. It separates fact from judgment. The fact is, I wrote and published a book which has received positive reviews. The judgment is, I am a fraud and a hack. The benevolent observer refuses to give its assent to the judgment. It might then gently offer a rational counterstatement. It is a common experience to feel self-doubt after a success. The evidence at hand suggests competence. The future is not in my control. The only thing in my control is the work of today. What is the next virtuous action? To sit down and write one good sentence. The entire internal weather system has shifted from a hurricane of anxiety to a calm, workable clarity. This is a dialogue you can learn to have with yourself. When the critic attacks, summon the observer. When the critic says, "You ruined everything," the observer asks, calmly, "Is that really true? Or did I make a mistake from which I can learn? Does this single event define my entire existence?" When the critic says, "No one likes you," the observer responds, "I cannot control the minds of others. And is it a verifiable fact that no one likes me? Or is this an exaggeration fueled by a moment of sadness? I will focus on being a likable person, which is within my control, and let the results be what they are." You are, in effect, becoming your own therapist, applying logic and compassion to your own irrational fears. This does not mean you will achieve a state of perfect domain, silent bliss. The critic may never fully disappear. It is a part of our flawed human wiring. The goal is not to silence the voice, but to change your relationship to it. The goal is to build the benevolent observer into the true ruler of your inner citadel, so that when the critic speaks, it is heard not as the king's command, but as the muttering of a court jester, a foolish character whose pronouncements are no longer taken seriously. When your inner world is no longer a battlefield, when you are not wasting immense amounts of energy fighting a civil war against yourself, an incredible amount of power is liberated. This newfound peace and internal order is not an end in itself. It is the necessary foundation for effective, virtuous action in the world. A mind that is clear, calm, and self-compassionate is a mind that is ready to do its duty. It is ready to turn its focus from internal squabbles to external contribution, having established good governance within the walls of the citadel. We can now turn our attention to the world outside, not as a source of threats, but as a field of action, a place to practice our virtue and fulfill our obligations to the human family. The inner citadel is built. The walls are strong. The gatekeeper is vigilant. The inner critic has been quieted by a benevolent observer, and the king of the fortress is guided by a love of fate and the true north of virtue. It is a masterpiece of inner architecture, a sanctuary of peace amidst the chaos of the world. And now, a question arises: what is it for? Is this fortress a final destination, a place to retire from the world, sealing the gates and enjoying a solitary daughter? Detached peace? The Stoics would answer with a thunderous, unequivocal no. The citadel is not a retirement home. It is a barracks. It is a command center. The peace we cultivate within is not an end in itself. It is the necessary fuel for a life of meaningful action. The entire purpose of building an untouchable mind is to then go out into the world and act. Stoicism is not a philosophy of passive contemplation. It is a philosophy for the arena of life. The great Stoic teacher Epictetus organized the philosophy into three essential disciplines. First, the discipline of desire, which teaches us to want the right things to align our will with nature and to love our fate. Second, the discipline of assent, which teaches us to see the world clearly, to separate raw events from our subjective judgments about them. We have explored these inner arts at length, but they are both in service of the third and final discipline, the one that governs our interaction with the world, the discipline of action. This is where the philosophy gets its hands dirty. It is the application of our inner clarity to our external lives. It is about how we behave, how we treat others, and how we fulfill our purpose. The most powerful illustration of this discipline comes from the private journal of the man who had more duties than any other, Marcus Aurelius. Imagine him at dawn, in a cold tent on the banks of the Danube River, the fate of the Roman Empire resting on his shoulders. He is tired. He is old. He has every excuse to stay under the warm blankets. We can hear him wrestling with this temptation in his meditations, and then we hear him deploying the discipline of action as a call to arms for his own soul. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, he tells himself, "Remind yourself of this. I am rising to do the work of a human being. What do I have to complain about? If I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do, or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm?" This is not the voice of a man motivated by fame, or wealth, or power. This is the voice of a man motivated by duty. He reminds himself that, just as a spider is meant to spin its web and a bee is meant to make honey, a human being is meant to work with and for others. This is our function. To shirk this duty, to choose comfort over contribution, is to be a deserter from the post of nature. Notice, he does not say, "I am rising to do the work of an emperor." He says the work of a human being. He makes his duty universal. Whether you are an emperor, a parent, an artist, a teacher, or a cashier, you have a function to perform. You have a role to play in the grand drama of the world. This is the core of the discipline of action, to identify your roles, understand the duties that come with them, and perform those duties to the absolute best of your ability. With virtue as your guide, each of us wears many hats. You are not just one thing. You are a child to your parents. You might be a parent to your children. You are a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, a citizen. Each of these roles carries with it a natural set of duties. A parent's duty is to provide not just food and shelter, but patience, wisdom, and love. An employee's duty is to perform their tasks with diligence, honesty, and integrity. A friend's duty is to offer support, to listen, and to speak the truth with kindness. A citizen's duty is to contribute to the common good and to act in a way that benefits the society that supports them. The Stoic life is one of identifying these duties and embracing them, not as burdens, but as opportunities for excellence. But simply performing an action is not enough. The discipline of action demands that we perform our duties through the lens of the four virtues. Let's take a common modern challenge, a stressful and contentious meeting at work. You have a project you believe in, but you face opposition. How does a Stoic act? They don't focus on the outcome winning the argument. They focus on the quality of their own actions. They apply the virtues. Justice means they listen fairly to the other side, acknowledging valid points and treating colleagues with respect, not as enemies to be defeated. Courage means they speak their mind clearly and honestly, even if their position is unpopular, and they take responsibility for their part in the project, good or bad. Temperance means they keep their ego in check. They don't get defensive when criticized. They don't let anger or frustration dictate their response. They remain calm and rational. And wisdom means they see the bigger picture beyond their own ego. They remember the ultimate goal of the company and try to find the best path forward for the common good, not just for their own department. After acting with all four virtues, the outcome of the meeting is a preferred indifferent. If their project is approved, that is good. If it is rejected, that is also acceptable. Because they have succeeded in the only thing that is truly up to them, they have acted with excellence. Their eudaimonia, their inner peace and self-respect, is intact regardless of the result. This is how Stoicism transforms the workplace, the family home, and our civic life from a source of stress into a gymnasium for the soul. Every interaction, every task, every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice virtue. Washing the dishes is an opportunity to practice mindfulness and service to your family. Commuting in traffic is an opportunity to practice patience. Paying your taxes is an opportunity to practice your duty as a citizen. The discipline of action teaches us to find meaning not in grand, heroic gestures, but in the virtuous execution of our mundane, daily tasks. The peace you have cultivated in your inner citadel is not for hoarding. It is your strategic reserve. It is the calm center from which you can engage with a chaotic world effectively and gracefully. When you are not wasting energy on needless anxiety. When you are not at war with your inner critic. You are free to direct all of your power toward what is right in front of you, your work, your family, your community. You do the right thing, not because you are seeking a reward, but because it is the right thing to do. That is your function. This, then, raises a profound and essential question. Why? Why is our function to work with and for others? Why is our duty to the common good for the Stoics? This was not merely a matter of social contract or ethical convenience. It was a reflection of the fundamental nature of the cosmos itself. It was based on the understanding that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a single, living, interconnected whole. And understanding this cosmic connection is the key to unlocking the deepest wellspring of our motivation to act. We have arrived at a critical juncture in our journey. We have fortified our inner citadel, and we have dedicated ourselves to the discipline of action, to performing our duties with virtue. But a question lingers in the foundation of it all. A fundamental why. Why should we do our duty? Why should we act for the common good? Why should the emperor rise from his warm bed to serve a distant and often ungrateful people? Is it merely a social contract, an enlightened form of self-interest? The Stoics offered a far deeper, more profound, and more beautiful answer. Their ethics were not built on a contract, but on a cosmic truth. The motivation for all our action is rooted in a concept they called sympathia. This is the recognition that all things in the universe, from the smallest insect to the most distant star, from you to your worst enemy, are fundamentally interconnected, part of a single, living, breathing whole. Imagine your own body. It is composed of many different parts: hands, feet, eyes, a heart, a liver. Each has its own unique function. Yet, none of them exist for themselves alone. The hand does not grasp for its own benefit. It grasps for the entire body. The eye does not see simply for the pleasure of sight. It sees to guide and protect the whole. The heart does not beat to admire its own rhythm. It beats to supply life to every other cell. If the hand were to decide to strike the foot, or if the organs were to declare war on one another, we would not call this freedom. We would call it disease. An autoimmune disorder, a state of self-destruction. This is insanity. Now, the Stoics ask you to take this undeniable truth and apply it to the entire cosmos. Each individual human being is a limb of the larger body of humanity. Each of us is a single cell in the organism of the world. What is not good for the beehive, Marcus Aurelius wrote, is not good for the bee. To harm another person, to act against the common good, is to be the hand that strikes the foot. It is an act of cosmic self-mutilation. It is illogical, unnatural, and ultimately, self-defeating. This profound sense of connection is the logical extension of everything we have learned. It is the feeling that accompanies the view from above. When you see the Earth from space, a single, borderless organism teeming with life, you are seeing a portrait of sympathia. It is the intellectual understanding that our fates are intertwined. This idea is powered by the Stoic concept of the logos, the universal reason or divine fire that permeates all of creation. They believe that every human being contains a spark of this same logos. This means that on a fundamental level, we are all made of the same stuff. We are chips off the same divine block, waves in the same cosmic ocean. My reason is related to your reason. Our brotherhood is not a sentimental ideal. It is a fact of our shared spiritual genetics. When you understand this, your entire relationship with the world changes. Other people are no longer other. They are you. In a different form, they are fellow limbs of the same body. This understanding is not meant to be a passive, abstract belief. It is meant to be a powerful engine for action and a source of deep emotional intelligence. When you truly internalize the idea of sympathia, it naturally cultivates a profound empathy. It becomes difficult to treat anyone with cruelty, contempt, or even indifference, because you recognize them as part of yourself. Their suffering diminishes the whole. Their flourishing enriches it. It also transforms competition into cooperation. If we are all parts of the same body, then life is not a zero-sum game where one must lose for another to win. It is a collaborative project. The success of my colleague is a success for the entire enterprise. The health of my neighbor is a benefit to the entire community. It inspires a joyful sense of service. The discipline of action ceases to be a grim, joyless duty. It becomes the natural expression of our function. To serve others is not a sacrifice. It is the fulfillment of our purpose. Just as it is the fulfillment of a lung's purpose to breathe. It is simply us, playing our part in the health of the whole. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles offered a beautiful and practical exercise to help cultivate this sense of cosmic connection. He asked us to visualize our relationships as a series of concentric circles. The first, innermost circle is the self, our own mind and body, immediately surrounding. That is a circle containing our immediate family. The next circle holds our extended family. Beyond that is a circle for our neighbors and our local community. Then a circle for our fellow citizens. Then one for all of humanity. Hierocles said that the task of a philosopher is to constantly work to draw these outer circles inward. We must make a conscious effort to treat our cousins as we treat our siblings. We must strive to treat our neighbors as we treat our cousins. We must practice referring to our fellow citizens as our neighbors. And eventually, to think of all human beings, from every corner of the earth, as our fellow countrymen, our kin. This is a powerful meditative practice. It is the conscious training of the mind to break down the artificial barriers of us versus them, and to widen the circle of our care until it encompasses the entire human family. It is the practical application of sympathia. This is why a Stoic cares. This is why we get out of bed in the morning to do the work of a human being. We do it because we are inextricably linked to every other person. We do it because our personal flourishing is inseparable from the flourishing of the whole. Our inner citadel is not a fortress designed to keep the world out. It is a lighthouse, built on a strong foundation, designed to shine a beacon of reason, virtue, and compassion out into the world. It is our base of operations from which we can be a better friend, a better parent, a better citizen, a better human. We are not isolated islands, adrift in a meaningless void. We are threads, each unique and essential, woven together into a single, vast, and magnificent tapestry. Our purpose is found in playing our part to preserve the beauty and integrity of that divine pattern. But understanding these grand, cosmic ideas is one thing. How do we keep them alive in our hearts and minds amidst the noise and distraction of daily life? How do we hold ourselves accountable to these high ideals? For this, the Stoics relied on a simple, private, yet profoundly powerful daily practice, the art of philosophical journaling. We have journeyed to the highest planes of philosophy, exploring cosmic connection, the nature of virtue, and our duty to the human race. These are profound, powerful ideas, but like stars in the daylight, they can easily fade from view amidst the glare of daily life. You can listen to an inspiring idea. I feel a surge of motivation. And then, within hours, find yourself reacting to the world with the same old habits, the same old anxieties. The critical question for any philosophy is not how beautiful it sounds, but how it is lived. How do we bridge the gap between abstract principle and concrete action? How do we keep these vital lessons present and active in our lives? The Stoics had a simple, elegant, and profoundly effective answer: the journal. Now, when you hear the word journal or diary, you might picture a teenager recording crushes and complaints. The Stoic journal is something entirely different. It is not a logbook for external events, nor is it a place for idle gossip or emotional venting. It is a workbook for the soul. It is a private gymnasium where you train your mind. It is a laboratory where you dissect your own thoughts and reactions. Its purpose is not to record the life you are living, but to actively shape the life you want to live. It is the most crucial tool for turning philosophy from a passive intellectual pursuit into an active intradi daily practice, and we have the ultimate example of what this practice looks like. It is one of the greatest books ever written, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. The book we call Meditations was never intended to be a book. The original Greek title, ta eis hoton, translates literally as things to himself. It was Marcus's private journal, his workbook. He was not writing for us. He was writing for himself. To himself, he was reminding himself of his Stoic principles, coaching himself through moments of doubt, preparing himself for the immense pressures of his day, and holding himself accountable at its end. When we read the Meditations, we are eavesdropping on the most intimate and honest conversation a person can have. He reminds himself to be tolerant, to be focused, to ignore the opinions of others, and to get out of bed and do his job. He is, in essence, becoming his own teacher, his own therapist, and his own spiritual guide. This is the model for our own practice. The goal is to create your own meditations. This practice can be broken down into 2 key sessions, one to prepare for the day ahead, and one to review the day that has passed. The morning session is your philosophical warm-up. Before the world has a chance to throw its impressions at you, you prepare your mind. You might begin by simply setting your intention for the day today. My goal is to live with virtue, to respond with reason and kindness, no matter what happens. Then, you can engage in a short, practical premeditatio malorum. Think about the day ahead. What challenges are likely to arise? A difficult colleague, a tedious task, a stressful commute. Visualize these events, and then rehearse your ideal response. Imagine facing that difficult colleague, not with anger, but with justice and temperance. Imagine tackling that tedious task, not with resentment, but with diligence and a sense of duty. Marcus Aurelius practiced a specific version of this, preparing himself for the frustrating people he would inevitably encounter. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote to himself, "Tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This sounds incredibly pessimistic, but it is deeply strategic. He continues, explaining that they are only this way because they are ignorant of what is truly good and evil. He, on the other hand, knows the nature of virtue. Therefore, he cannot be harmed by them. And more importantly, he must remember that they are his kin, part of the same human family, and that his job is to work with them, not against them. He was not pre-embittering himself. He was pre-inoculating himself with patience and empathy. The second session, the evening review, is perhaps even more crucial. It is your daily accounting of the soul. Before sleep, when the world is quiet, you take out your journal and conduct a non-judgmental review of your day. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, who learned the practice from his Pythagorean teachers, advised asking ourselves 3 simple questions. What did I do wrong today? What did I do right? And what duty was left undone? Or what could I do differently tomorrow? The first question, what did I do wrong, is an exercise in honest self-assessment. Where did I fall short of my own principles? Did I get angry over something outside of my control? Did I assent to a negative judgment without examining it first? Did I speak unkindly or act selfishly? The goal here is not to beat yourself up. The benevolent observer is conducting this review, not the inner critic. It is simply about identifying errors, like a pilot reviewing flight data to see where a maneuver could have been smoother. The second question, what did I do right, is vital for reinforcement and self-compassion. Where did I succeed? Did I remain calm during a provocation? Did I act with courage when I was afraid? Did I treat someone with unexpected kindness? Acknowledging these successes strengthens the virtuous habit. The final question, what could I do differently, turns every day into a lesson. It transforms your life from a series of random events into a curriculum for wisdom. You close the day not with regret, but with a clear plan for how to be just a little bit better tomorrow. This simple, consistent practice is transformative. Writing forces clarity, a vague anxiety, when you try to write it down, must be articulated. And in its articulation, it often reveals its own absurdity. The journal holds you accountable. It is a private contract you make with the best version of yourself. A way to track your progress and to remind yourself of the person you have committed to becoming. It is the safest space imaginable for a truly honest conversation. There are no pretenses in the pages of your journal. It is simply you, speaking to you, for the betterment of you. This is the forge. This is where the abstract gold of philosophy is hammered into the hard, practical steel of character. This is where you take the grand ideas of virtue and sympathia and examine whether you actually live them in the small moments of your day. And through this private, internal dialogue, you become your own guide, but even the best guide can benefit from studying the maps drawn by those who have walked the path before. And so, in addition to this private conversation with ourselves, we can seek guidance by looking to the lives of great men and women. By finding a Stoic role model, we have explored the vast, cosmic perspective of sympathia and the intimate, private practice of the philosophical journal. The Stoic toolkit is becoming robust. We have the grand theories and the personal methods for integrating them. Yet, there are times when, in the heat of a difficult moment, we need a guide that is more immediate than a cosmic principle and more direct than a written reflection. We are social creatures. And since childhood, we have learned our most profound lessons not from abstract rules, but by watching and imitating others. We learn to walk by watching our parents. We learn a skill by watching a master. The Stoics understood this fundamental aspect of human nature and harnessed it as a powerful tool for moral development. They taught that to live a virtuous life, we should choose a role model, a person of unimpeachable character, and keep their example ever before our eyes. The philosopher Seneca gave this exact advice to his friend Lucilius in one of his famous letters. We need to set our affections on some good man, he wrote, and keep him constantly before our eyes, so that we may live as if he were watching us and do everything as if he saw what we were doing. This is not an invitation to hero worship or a command to lose your own identity. It is a brilliant psychological strategy, a kind of ethical shortcut. In a moment of temptation or confusion, when the complexities of a situation make it difficult to reason through the four virtues from scratch, you can simply ask yourself a much simpler question. What would my role model do? This single question can cut through a fog of uncertainty and illuminate the correct path with astonishing clarity. It externalizes the ideal. Instead of trying to live up to an abstract concept of courage, you can strive to live up to the specific, observable courage of a person you admire. Seneca went even further, offering a specific candidate for this role. Choose a Cato, he advised. He was referring to Cato the Younger, the Roman senator we have already met, the man who became the Stoic saint for his unwavering integrity in the face of tyranny. Why Cato? Because Cato's character was a ruler against which any deviation was immediately obvious. He was a man utterly indifferent to the preferred indifference of wealth, pleasure, and public opinion. His only concern was the sole good of virtue. And so, he becomes an incredibly useful tool for self-assessment. When you are faced with a choice, you invoke the spirit of Cato. Would Cato cut corners on this project to save time? Would Cato remain silent in the face of injustice to protect his career? Would Cato overindulge in food, drink, or idle gossip? Would Cato flatter a powerful person for his own gain? The answer is always a clear, sharp, and unambiguous no. The presence of Cato in your mind acts as a powerful deterrent to vice and a compelling invitation to your own better nature. He becomes your inner consultant on matters of character. While Cato is a powerful and historically significant choice, the true aim of the practice is to find a figure who resonates personally with you. The person you choose should embody the virtues you most want to cultivate. This might be another of the great Stoics. You could choose Marcus Aurelius as your guide for shouldering immense responsibility with patience and a sense of duty. You could choose Epictetus for his cheerful resilience in the face of extreme hardship, a master of finding freedom even in chains. But you are not limited to the ancients. You can find embodiments of Stoic virtue throughout history. You might choose Abraham Lincoln for his profound sense of justice and his ability to endure unimaginable pressure with humility and resolve. You might choose Nelson Mandela, who survived decades of unjust imprisonment and emerged not with bitterness, but with the magnanimous courage to forgive his enemies and unite a nation. Your role model need not even be a world historical figure. It could be a grandparent who faced life's struggles with quiet dignity and unwavering kindness. It could be a teacher who inspired in you a love of wisdom. It could be a mentor who showed you what true integrity in your profession looks like. The key is that this person's example provides you with a living, breathing blueprint for virtue. Once you have chosen your role model, the practice involves 3 steps. First, You must study them. Read their biographies, their letters, their works. Understand not just their triumphs, but their struggles. The more vividly you can picture them as a complete human being, the more powerful their example will become. Second, you must consciously invoke them in moments of choice. When you are unsure how to act, pause it. Bring their image to your mind and ask the question, what would they do right now? Let their example guide your hand. Third, you can use them as a partner in your philosophical journal. You can write down your dilemma and then have a dialogue with your mentor on the page, writing out the advice you imagine they would give. This is a powerful way to access your own higher reason by channeling it through the persona of someone you admire. This practice is also a powerful guard against hypocrisy. It is easy to act well when others are watching, but our true character is revealed by what we do when we believe we are alone. Seneca noted that we would all be more virtuous if we placed a witness in our solitude. By choosing a role model and living as if they are always watching, you begin to close the gap between your public self and your private self. Your character becomes more consistent, more whole. You are no longer performing virtue for an audience. You are living it as a state of being. This is not about becoming a carbon copy of another person. You are not Cato. You are you. The goal is not to mimic their life, but to be inspired by their principles, to use their example as a catalyst for developing your own unique character. They are the North Star that gives you a fixed point to navigate by. But you must still sail your own ship. Having such a figure in mind, a constant reminder of what integrity and self-possession look like, is particularly useful when we face one of the most common and irritating challenges of social life, the sting of insults and the petty slights of others. How would a person with the unshakable self-worth of a Cato or the profound perspective of a Marcus Aurelius respond when someone tried to belittle them? How would they protect their inner citadel from the verbal arrows of others? Their example shows us that it is possible to become immune to such attacks, and understanding how they achieved that immunity is our next practical lesson in the art of tranquility. The inner citadel is strong. Your principles are clear. You have chosen a virtuous role model to guide you. You are now ready to engage with the world, and the world will engage back. One of the most common and most effective weapons that the world uses to test the walls of your fortress is the insult. It is a universal human experience. A single sharp word from a colleague, a condescending remark from a family member, a hateful comment from a stranger online. These things have the power to pierce our peace, to hijack our thoughts, and to ruin our day. We feel the flush of anger or the sting of shame. We replay the words over and over, crafting the perfect retort. Long after the moment has passed, how can something so flimsy, a mere puff of air shaped into sound, have such immense power over us? The Stoics answer with a liberating truth: it doesn't. An insult has no power on its own. It is a dead thing. We are the ones who give it life. We are the ones who animate it with our own judgment. And we are the ones who willingly drink the poison it offers. To understand how to become immune to insults, we must first return to our foundational principles. First, the dichotomy of control. What another person says, thinks, or does is fundamentally, unequivocally, outside of your control. To become upset by their words is to violate the first rule of tranquility, to suffer over things that are not up to you. Second, the art of assent. The words themselves are just neutral events. The sound waves travel through the air and strike your eardrum. It is the second step. Your internal judgment, your assent to the idea, I have been harmed, or what they said is true and it diminishes my worth, that creates the suffering. The insult is the spark, but you provide the tinder. Without your assent, the spark lands on wet stone and fizzles out. Harmless. Epictetus put it with his characteristic bluntness: if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. You have allowed your peace to be taken. He compared it to handing over your body to a random passerby. You would be furious. yet you hand over your most precious possession, your mind, to anyone who cares to throw a verbal stone at it. Once you understand that the harm is self-inflicted, you can begin to practice the art of self-defense. The Stoics developed a sophisticated toolkit of responses, not for fighting back, but for demonstrating with unshakable calm that the attack never landed in the first place. The first, and often most powerful, response is no response at all. Silence. A lion does not concern itself with the barking of a dog. To get angry, to argue, to offer a defense, is to stoop to the level of the insulter. It is to acknowledge that their words have merit and require a rebuttal. By simply continuing on your way, by offering a calm, unbothered silence, you communicate a message of supreme confidence. What you have said is of no importance to me. It has not registered. It has not breached the walls. This is the response of a mind that finds its validation internally, not externally. The second tool is humor. Humor is a sign of superiority and control. By laughing at an insult, you rob it of its intended venom and show the aggressor that their attempt to cause pain is amusingly ineffective. There is a famous story about Socrates, who was once kicked by a man on the street. As the man was being berated by Socrates' furious friends, the philosopher just shrugged and said with a smile, "What if a donkey had kicked me? Would you have me soothe the donkey?" With this simple, witty remark, he reframed his attacker not as a worthy adversary, but as an irrational beast whose actions were beneath his concern. The insult was not just ignored, it was rendered absurd. A third, more advanced technique is calm agreement, a form of strategic self-deprecation. If someone insults you with something that has a kernel of truth to it, you can disarm them completely by agreeing with them, and even amplifying the insult. Epictetus coached his students on this very technique. He said, "If you learn that someone is speaking ill of you, don't make excuses, but reply yes, and he doesn't know the rest of my faults, or he would have mentioned them as well." This is a masterstroke. The insulter's goal is to expose a weakness and cause you shame. By calmly and cheerfully exposing it yourself, you show that you feel no shame. You have already accepted your own imperfections. Their weapon has no target. You have turned their attack into an opportunity to display humility, honesty, and an untouchable sense of self. Our great role model, Cato, was a master of becoming insult-proof. He understood that our vulnerability to insult stems from our attachment to reputation and our fear of public opinion, so he trained himself to be indifferent to them. He would deliberately walk through the streets of Rome barefoot or wearing old, unfashionable clothing, inviting the ridicule of the mob. When people laughed or made snide remarks, it was an opportunity for him to practice non-reaction. It was a test. Was his sense of self located in his character, or in the opinions of these strangers? By repeatedly enduring their scorn without flinching, he hardened his mind against it, proving to himself that his worth was entirely internal. He was building a fortress whose walls were so thick that no verbal arrow could penetrate them. Ultimately, all of these strategies are built upon one central pillar. You must cease to seek external validation. If you need other people to think you are intelligent, then a person calling you stupid becomes a mortal threat. If you need others to find you attractive, then a comment about your appearance can ruin your day. If you need to be seen as successful, then any criticism of your work feels like a catastrophe. The Stoic relocates the seat of judgment. The only opinion that truly matters is the opinion of your own benevolent observer, your own rational mind, judging your actions against the standard of virtue. Does it matter if an ignorant person calls you a fool, if you know you have acted with wisdom? Does it matter if a cruel person calls you weak, if you know you have acted with courage? The world's opinion is a preferred indifferent. It's nice to have their approval, but our flourishing, our eudaimonia, does not depend on it in the slightest. Freedom from the sting of insults is one of the clearest signs of a truly liberated mind. It demonstrates that you have successfully moved your sense of self-worth from the fragile, shifting ground of public opinion to the solid bedrock of your own inner citadel. You have not learned to suppress your anger. You have transcended the very game that produces it. Now, insults are the negative currency of the external world. But what about the positive currency? What about praise, wealth, and pleasure? It is easy to see why we should be indifferent to pain. But it is much harder to learn the correct relationship to the things that society tells us are the ultimate prizes. Learning to be unmoved by criticism is only half the battle. The other half is learning to be unmoved by flattery and to handle the gifts of fortune with wisdom and detachment. This is our next task, to understand the true nature of wealth and pleasure. We have built an impressive fortress. We have learned to deflect the verbal arrows of insults and criticism, understanding that our worth is not determined by the opinions of others. Our citadel is secure from negative assaults. But now we face a more subtle, and perhaps more dangerous, type of siege. This is not an attack, but an invitation. It is the seductive call of wealth, the comforting embrace of pleasure, the glittering prize of status. Society tells us in a million different ways that these are the things worth fighting for. The very definition of a good life. A philosophy that simply rejects these things feels cold, grim, and disconnected from human reality. And so, a crucial question arises: does the Stoic live a life of joyless, austere poverty, denying every pleasure and scorning every comfort? The answer is a clear and resounding no. Stoicism does not command you to reject the gifts of fortune, but it offers a revolutionary way to relate to them, a path that allows you to enjoy them more fully, without the anxiety, dependency, and moral compromise they so often entail. The key to understanding this relationship is the concept we have touched on before: the preferred indifference. Let us be precise. As we know, the only true good for the Stoic is virtue. Things like wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance are the sole determinants of a flourishing life. Or eudaimonia. Everything else, your health, your reputation, your career, your relationships, and yes, your wealth and your experience of pleasure are technically indifferent to your moral character. A virtuous person is virtuous whether they are rich or poor, sick or healthy. However, some of these indifferents are naturally preferred. It is rational and natural to prefer health over sickness, friendship over loneliness, and wealth over poverty. The mistake is not in preferring these things, but in elevating them from the status of preferred to the status of good. The moment you believe that wealth is a good in itself, your tranquility is lost, because wealth is outside of your complete control. To understand this in practice, we must look at the most controversial and fascinating of the great Stoics, Seneca. Unlike the lame slave Epictetus or the dutiful emperor Marcus Aurelius, Seneca was a man of immense, almost unimaginable, personal wealth. He was a powerful senator, a skilled investor, an advisor to the emperor Nero, and he owned lavish villas and vast tracts of land across the empire. For centuries, critics have pointed to this as a sign of blatant hypocrisy. How could a man so rich preach indifference to riches? Seneca's response to this charge forms the very core of the Stoic teaching on wealth. He argued brilliantly that it is precisely the sage who is best equipped to handle wealth. He wrote, "For the wise man does not consider himself unworthy of any gifts from fortune's hands. He does not love wealth, but he would rather have it." Why would a wise man prefer wealth? Because it provides a wider field on which to practice virtue. A poor person can practice the virtues of fortitude and contentment in their poverty, but a wealthy person has the opportunity to practice a far broader range of virtues: generosity to friends, philanthropy to the community, magnanimity in their dealings, and careful stewardship of their resources. The crucial distinction for Seneca was this: he possessed his wealth, but his wealth did not possess him. He held fortune's gifts with an open hand, knowing that she could ask for them back at any moment. And he was prepared to let them go without complaint or despair. He said that the difference between himself and a rich fool is that the fool's treasures are buried with him. But his own wealth was so loosely attached that he could lose it all, and it would cost him nothing but the loss of itself. This is the central danger of making wealth or pleasure your primary goal. It inevitably corrupts your character. If getting rich is your highest good, you will eventually face a choice where you must compromise your integrity to achieve it. You will lie, or cheat, or betray someone's trust. You will trade the sole good virtue for a preferred indifference. This, for a Stoic, is the definition of a fool's bargain. Furthermore, the pursuit of these things is a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction. The thrill of a new car fades. The comfort of a bigger house becomes the new normal. The pleasure of a decadent meal is fleeting. This is the hedonic treadmill, a race that cannot be won, always requiring more and more stimulation to achieve the same level of satisfaction. It is a life of frantic, anxious striving, never one of peace. So, how did Seneca ensure that he was the master of his wealth and not its slave? He practiced, as we've learned. He would periodically engage in voluntary poverty. For a few days, he would cast off his fine robes, eat simple barley cakes and water, and sleep on the floor, constantly asking himself, "Is this the condition that I so feared?" He was running a fire drill for his soul. He was testing his own detachment, proving to himself that his philosophy was not just a collection of nice-sounding theories, but a tested, practical reality. He was ensuring that his inner citadel was not dependent on the luxurious furnishings he had placed within it. This same principle applies to pleasure. The Stoic is not a killjoy. They can savor a fine wine, enjoy a beautiful piece of art, or appreciate a warm day, but they do so with a mindful detachment. They appreciate the experience for what it is, a transient gift of fortune, without clinging to it or mourning its passing. They can find equal tranquility in a cup of water as they can in the finest wine. Their happiness is not contingent on the quality of their sensory experience. This allows for a purer kind of enjoyment, one free from the desperate need to make it last or the fear of its absence. You can fully inhabit the pleasant moment precisely because you are not terrified of it ending. The Stoic relationship with these externals, then, is one of sovereign mastery. It is the art of owning things without being owned by them. It is the freedom to enjoy life's gifts without becoming their slave. It is holding all things your property, your relationships, your very body with an open hand, grateful for them while they are here, but ready to let them go without breaking your spirit when the time comes. This mindset places you in a position of ultimate psychological power. You are free to pursue great projects, to build businesses, to create art, because you are not terrified of failure. You are free to love people deeply, because you know your core self is secure, even if you lose them. You have learned the correct relationship with the things the world offers. Now, we must turn our attention to the source of all this striving, the very engine of our desires, and learn to master it at its source. If we are not to desire wealth and pleasure above all else, what should we desire? The answer lies in the next great discipline, the art of wanting what you already have. We have learned to handle the world's offerings, both positive and negative. We have built a citadel capable of deflecting insults and of enjoying wealth and pleasure without becoming enslaved by them. We are now arriving at the very heart of the Stoic operating system, the master discipline that governs all others. Every moment of anxiety, every pang of envy, every restless craving stems from a single source, the gap between what we have and what we want. The modern world offers one solution to this problem: close the gap by getting more. More money, more status, more possessions, more experiences. It is a philosophy of addition. The Stoics proposed a solution that is far more powerful and infinitely more attainable. They teach us to close the gap, not by accumulating more, but by wanting less of what is outside our control. and learning to passionately want what we already possess. This is the discipline of desire. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew more about true freedom than perhaps anyone, considered this the first and most essential of all the philosophical arts. If you could master your desires, he argued, the rest would fall into place. His core promise was as shocking as it was simple. Freedom isn't secured by filling up on your heart's desires, but by eliminating your desires. To the modern ear, this sounds like a recipe for a barren, joyless life. But Epictetus was not telling us to stop wanting. He was telling us to be intelligent about what we want. He taught that this discipline has two fundamental parts. First, to cease desiring what is outside your control. And second, to redirect that powerful energy of desire toward what is entirely within your control. The first part is a direct application of the dichotomy of control. To desire anything not fully up to you, a promotion, the affection of another person, a sunny day for your vacation, is to willingly hand over your peace of mind to external forces. You become a servant to the thing you crave. If you get it, you feel a fleeting moment of relief, immediately followed by the anxiety of losing it. If you don't get it, you feel frustration, envy, and despair. Either way, you are not free. You are a puppet whose strings are pulled by chance and the actions of others. The Stoic, therefore, performs a radical act of liberation. They consciously and deliberately work to withdraw the energy of desire from these externals. This doesn't mean they don't prefer them. They can still enjoy a sunny day, but they do not tie their well-being to it. Their happiness is not contingent on the weather. By eliminating the anxious craving for things they cannot command, they reclaim their freedom. But desire is a fire. It cannot simply be extinguished. It must be given a new kind of fuel. This is the second, and more inspiring, part of the discipline. The Stoic takes all of that passionate energy, all of that burning human need for more, and they redirect it toward the only target in the universe that is worthy of it. The only thing that can never be taken away: their own moral character. You must learn to desire virtue with the same passion a miser desires gold. Crave wisdom, thirst for justice, burn with the desire to be courageous in the face of fear and temperate in the face of temptation. This is a desire that can never be frustrated. Nothing and no one can stop you, in this very moment, from choosing to be a better person. By redirecting your desire inward, toward the quality of your own will, you make your happiness completely invulnerable. You become the master of your own satisfaction. There is a timeless parable that beautifully illustrates the wisdom of this approach. An American investment banker, on vacation in a small coastal Mexican village, saw a local fisherman relaxing in his small boat next to several large yellowfin tuna. The American, impressed, asked the fisherman how long it took to catch them. "Only a little while," the fisherman replied. The American then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The fisherman said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American, a man accustomed to optimizing everything, became animated. "But imagine what you could do," he said. "If you spent more time fishing, you could buy a bigger boat. With a bigger boat, you could catch more fish and buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a whole fleet. You could open your own cannery, control the product, processing, and distribution. You could leave this small village and move to Mexico City, then Los Angeles, and eventually New York City, where you would run your expanding enterprise." The fisherman asked, "But, senor, how long would all that take?" The American calculated. 15, maybe 20 years. "And then what?" "Senor," the American left. "That's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO, sell your company's stock to the public, and become very rich. You would make millions. Millions." "Senor." Then what? The American said. "Then you could retire. You could move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evening where you could sip wine and play the guitar with your friends. The Mexican fisherman smiled and said, "But that is what I am doing right now." This story is a perfect portrait of the human tendency to spend our lives anxiously striving for a state of contentment that is already available to us. If only we had the wisdom to see it. This is the art of wanting what you already have. And the primary tool for cultivating this art is gratitude. Gratitude, for the Stoic, is not a passive emotion you feel when something good happens. It is an active practice of perception. It is a conscious effort to focus on the value of what is present, rather than on the absence of what is missing. It is the most powerful antidote to the if-only disease. Instead of looking at your neighbor's new car with envy, you look at your own reliable vehicle with thanks for the freedom it provides. Instead of complaining about your job, you feel gratitude for the stability and purpose it brings. The practice is simple. Each day, make a list, either in your journal or in your mind, of the things you possess that you are grateful for. But don't just list them. As Seneca advised, truly contemplate them. Feel their value. Connect this with the practice of premeditatio malorum. Imagine your life without these things, and then feel the surge of joy that they are, in fact, still here, at least for today. The discipline of desire is the final key to unlocking the citadel from within. It is the radical realization that abundance is not a number in a bank account, but a state of mind. It is about closing the gap between having and wanting, not by adding to our possessions, but by subtracting our irrational cravings. It is the discovery that the peace and contentment we are chasing in the future is already here, waiting for us, in the present moment, if we only train our minds to see it. But a person who has achieved this state, who is not swayed by the desperate cravings and anxieties that drive most people, might appear strange. They might seem aloof, detached, or even emotionless. This raises a crucial, and often misunderstood, question about the inner life of the Stoic. In this quest to tame our desires and passions, have we eliminated our ability to feel? Are we trying to become unfeeling robots? The answer is no. And clarifying, this is essential to understanding the true emotional richness of the Stoic life. We have now reached a point in our journey where a shadow of doubt often falls upon those new to this philosophy. We have learned to discipline our desires, to be indifferent to wealth and pleasure, to remain unmoved by insults. We have built an inner citadel of reason and calm. To an outside observer, a person practicing these things might appear detached, distant, perhaps even cold. This has given rise to the most persistent and damaging caricature of the Stoic, the unfeeling, emotionless robot who suppresses all feeling, who greets triumph and tragedy with the same stony-faced indifference. The image of the person with a stiff upper lip, who bottles up their emotions. Let us be absolutely clear, this caricature is a profound misunderstanding of the Stoic emotional landscape. The goal of Stoicism is not to eliminate emotion. It is to distinguish between healthy emotions and unhealthy ones, and to cultivate a life filled with profound, resilient joy. It is not emotional suppression, it is emotional hygiene. To understand this, we must understand what the Stoics were actually targeting. They were not against feelings in general, but against a specific category of feelings they called the pathe, a word best translated not as emotions, but as passions, disturbances, or irrational afflictions of the soul. A passion, for the Stoic, is an excessive, unhealthy emotional reaction that is based on a false judgment about the world. It is what happens when we mistakenly believe that external things outside our control, are truly good or evil. The Stoics identified four primary passions. First, distress, which is the pain you feel over a present evil, like the anguish of losing money in the market. Second, fear, the pain you feel over a future evil, like the terror of an upcoming presentation. Third, lust or craving, which is the irrational craving for a future good, like the obsessive need for a new car or a promotion. And fourth, irrational delight, an excessive excitement over a present good, like the giddy, ego-driven ecstasy you feel from flattery, which makes you lose your judgment. The common thread here is that all these passions are based on the false belief that money, reputation, or possessions are truly good or evil. The goal of Stoicism is to achieve a state the Greeks called apatheia. And here is where the great misunderstanding occurs. Apatheia does not mean apathy. Its literal meaning is without pathe, or freedom from the passions. It is not a state of feeling nothing. It is the state of not being disturbed and hijacked by these irrational, unhealthy emotional reactions. It is tranquility, equanimity, the calm and steady mind of a person who sees the world correctly and is therefore free from the emotional roller coaster that afflicts those who pin their hopes and fears on external things. The Stoics were also brilliant psychologists. They understood that not all reactions are voluntary. They made a crucial distinction between our initial, involuntary reactions and our subsequent, voluntary judgments. They called these first reactions proto-passions. Imagine a loud bang happens right behind you. You will jump, your heart will race. You will feel a surge of adrenaline. This is a first movement, a physical reflex of the body. A Stoic sage would experience this just as anyone would. It is not up to us. The crucial difference lies in the second movement. The untrained person immediately follows the physical shock with a cognitive judgment. That was terrible. I'm in danger. This is awful. They assent to the impression of danger. And this assent transforms the initial, involuntary shock into the full-blown, irrational passion of fear. The sage, however, feels the same initial shock, but they withhold their assent. Their rational mind kicks in and says, "That was a loud noise. Let me assess the situation calmly." They acknowledge the physical reaction, but do not add a story of terror on top of it. They let the initial wave wash over them and return to a state of calm. This makes the philosophy practical and humane. It does not ask us to be superhuman, but to be wise in how we interpret our natural human reactions. This is only half the picture. Stoicism is not just about weeding out the negative, irrational passions. It is also about actively cultivating the positive, rational emotions, which they called the eupatheiai. These are the healthy emotional states that arise from correct judgments and a virtuous character. There are three main ones. The first is joy. This is not the giddy excitement of getting a new toy. It is a deep, stable, and rational elation that comes from contemplating your own virtue and the virtue of the cosmos. It is the quiet, profound contentment you feel when you know you have acted rightly, when your inner world is in harmony. The second is caution. This is not fear of external events. It is a rational aversion to vice. A Stoic is not afraid of losing their job, but they are cautious about acting unjustly or foolishly. It is the wise and healthy desire to protect one's own character from corruption. The third is willing. This is not an anxious craving for externals. It is a rational desire for virtue, for the good of all. Aligned with sympathia, it is the calm and steady wish to see justice done, to help others, and to act as a positive force in the world. The emotional life of a Stoic is not barren. It is carefully cultivated, replacing the volatile highs and lows of the passions with the stable, resilient, and deeply satisfying good emotions. Let us apply this to the most difficult of human experiences, grief. How does a Stoic grieve? When a Stoic loses a loved one, they feel the first movement. They feel the immediate, involuntary pang of loss. They may cry. They feel the pain of a preferred indifferent, their loved one being taken away. This is natural. What they strive to avoid is the secondary, irrational passion of all-consuming grief. They refuse to assent to the judgments. My life is over. or I cannot possibly go on. They remind themselves that death is a natural part of life, that they were fortunate to have that person for the time that they did, and that their own duty is to the living and to their own character. They can miss the person deeply. They can cherish their memory with a loving sadness. But they do not allow that sadness to curdle into the self-pitying despair that destroys their ability to live virtuously. Theirs is a sober grief, full of love, free from the destructive passion of despair. Stoicism, then, is the art of feeling wisely. It is about building an emotional resilience that allows you to experience the full spectrum of human life without being broken by it. And with this clear, stable emotional foundation, we are better equipped to direct our energy effectively in the world, to distinguish between what we should merely be concerned about and what we can truly influence. We stand within a well-ordered citadel. Our emotional life is not one of robotic suppression, but of cultivated joy and rational caution. We have learned to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy feelings, freeing ourselves from the tyranny of irrational passions. With this internal peace established, we must now decide how to wisely expend our energy in the world. It is easy to feel overwhelmed. The 24-hour news cycle, the endless scroll of social media, the sheer weight of the world's problems, from global conflicts and economic uncertainty to local politics and neighborhood disputes, can leave us feeling small, anxious, and utterly powerless. This feeling of helplessness, the Stoics would argue, is not a true reflection of our situation, but a symptom of a fundamental misallocation of our most precious resource, our focus. The key to reclaiming our power and effectiveness lies in a simple but profound mental model, a modern extension of the dichotomy of control, understanding the difference between our circle of concern and our circle of influence. Imagine two concentric circles. The larger, outer circle is your circle of concern. This circle contains every single thing you could possibly care or worry about. It includes the weather, the global economy, international politics, natural disasters, what other people think of you, and the traffic on your commute. It is vast, chaotic, and filled with things that lie far outside your control. Now, imagine a smaller circle nested inside that one. This is your circle of influence. This circle contains everything you can actually do something about. It includes your own habits, your work ethic, the words you choose to speak, the way you treat your family, the effort you put into the project on your desk, your personal budget, the books you read, and the skills you choose to develop. This circle is smaller, but it is the domain of your true power. Every human being operates in these two circles, but we make a fundamental choice about which one will receive the bulk of our energy and attention. This choice determines whether we live a life of proactive agency or one of reactive victimhood. The reactive person lives their life almost exclusively in their circle of concern. Their focus is outward, on the problems they cannot solve and the people they cannot change. Their language is filled with complaint, blame, and accusation. If only my boss wasn't so incompetent. I can't believe the state of politics. There's nothing anyone can do about the economy. My life would be better if other people were just different. Because they are constantly pushing against unmovable walls. They feel perpetually frustrated, angry, and helpless. They see themselves as victims of circumstance, tossed about by forces beyond their control. The tragic irony is that by pouring all their energy into their circle of concern, they neglect their circle of influence. Their skills atrophy, their relationships sour from negativity, and their own work suffers. As a result, their actual influence in the world begins to shrink. They become less trusted, less effective, and more of the victim they perceive themselves to be. The proactive person, on the other hand, makes a conscious decision to focus their energy on their circle of influence. They are aware of the problems in their circle of concern, but they do not waste their energy complaining about them. Instead, they turn their focus inward and ask the fundamental Stoic question: what is actually up to me right now? Their language is one of responsibility and initiative. Instead of complaining about the boss, they ask, what is the most effective way I can manage this relationship and produce excellent work? Instead of despairing about politics, they say, I can research the issues. I can vote. I can engage in respectful dialogue. I can contribute to my local community. Instead of worrying about the economy, they focus on improving their skills, saving money, and becoming more valuable and resilient. This focus is profoundly empowering. By working on the things they can control, they generate positive energy. They solve problems. They build trust. They get better at what they do. And as a direct result of this focused effort, their circle of influence begins to expand as they become more skilled, more trustworthy, and more effective. They are given more responsibility, and their ability to create positive change in the world grows. Consider two social activists, both deeply concerned about injustice in the world. The reactive activist spends their days online, immersed in their circle of concern. They get into furious arguments, share shocking and enraging content, and feel a constant sense of impotent despair. Their days are filled with stress and negativity, yet their actual impact is negligible. The proactive activist shares the same concerns, but asks, where is my circle of influence? They decide to start a mentorship program for underprivileged youth in their own town. They organize a fundraiser for a local shelter. They focus their energy on a tangible problem that is within their reach. They create real, measurable change. And in doing so, they inspire others to join them, causing their circle of influence to grow. The first activist is a victim of the world's problems. The second is a solution to a piece of them. This model is the discipline of action made beautifully simple. It is the practical application of the dichotomy of control in our daily lives. Whenever you feel yourself becoming angry, anxious, or helpless, use it as a diagnostic tool. Pause and ask yourself, where is my focus right now? Am I in the vast, uncontrollable circle of concern, or the potent, empowering circle of influence? The art of a good life is the art of constantly, consciously, and deliberately shifting your focus back to where you have power. It means accepting the things in your circle of concern with amor fati, and engaging with your circle of influence with virtuous action. This is the essence of strategic living. We must accept the things we cannot change, have the courage to change the things we can, and possess the wisdom to know the difference. By consistently applying our energy to our circle of influence, to our own character, our own duties, our own responses, we are walking the Stoic path. We are building our citadel brick by brick, not through abstract belief, but through concrete action. We are striving, with each choice, to become a more effective, a more resilient, and a more virtuous human being. This naturally leads to a final, aspirational question. If we were to continue on this path, if we were to perfect these practices, what would the final result look like? What is the ideal we are striving for? What is the perfect embodiment of this philosophy? The North Star of our personal development. For this, we must turn our gaze to the most revered and elusive figure in all of Stoicism, the ideal of the sage. We have methodically assembled the tools and fortified the walls of our inner citadel. We have learned to master our judgments, discipline our désir, and direct our actions toward the common good. We are working within our circle of influence, guided by the examples of the great minds who came before us. We are, in short, on the path. But what is the ultimate destination? What is the final, perfect embodiment of this entire philosophy? Every great craft has its theoretical ideal. The musician imagines the flawless performance. The athlete envisions the perfect game. The Stoics, who considered life itself to be the greatest craft, also had their ideal. It is the luminous, and perhaps unattainable figure that stands at the end of the path, a beacon of human potential. It is the Stoic sage. It is crucial to understand that the sage is first and foremost a North Star, not a destination you are expected to reach. A sailor crossing the ocean may never touch the North Star itself, but by keeping their eyes fixed upon it, they can navigate the vast, dark waters and arrive safely at their port. The sage serves the same function for us on our philosophical journey. It is the fixed point of perfection that allows us to orient ourselves and maintain our course. The ancient Stoics themselves admitted that a true sage was an incredibly rare phenomenon, perhaps appearing only once every few hundred years. They were not trying to create a culture of failure by setting an impossible standard. They were providing a beautiful and inspiring vision of what a human being, living in perfect accord with nature and reason, could be. So, what does this ideal look like? What defines the sage? First and foremost, the sage's mind is perfected. Their ruling faculty, their reason, operates with flawless clarity. They see the world exactly as it is, free from the distortions of ego, fear, or irracional decide, because their judgments are always correct. They have achieved a state of perfect apatheia, a complete freedom from the irrational passions. They feel no anxiety, no gnawing envy, no debilitating grief, no giddy overexcitement. Their inner world is a sea of absolute tranquility. This does not mean they are emotionless. On the contrary, they experience the good emotions, the eupathia, in their purest form. They feel a deep, unshakable joy in their own virtue, a rational caution that steers them away from vice, and a benevolent willing or desire for the good of all humanity. Their emotional life is not empty, it is perfectly harmonious and stable. Because the sage's judgments are perfect, they are, in a very real sense, invincible. They cannot be harmed. This is one of the most radical claims of Stoicism. How can this be? Because the sage understands with every fiber of their being that virtue is the sole good. An enemy can take their property, ruin their reputation, imprison their body, or even kill them. But no one, no matter how powerful, can force the sage to act unjustly. No one can compel them to assent to a false belief. No one can touch their character, since their good resides only in their character and their virtuous choices. And since that is the one thing that is absolutely their own, they are untouchable. The philosopher Socrates, on trial for his life, embodied this principle. He calmly told his accusers and the jury that they held no real power over him. Anytus and Meletus can kill me, he said, but they cannot harm me. They could end his life a preferred indifferent, but they could not damage his soul or his commitment to truth. This is the invulnerable fortress of the sage. In their outer life, every action a sage takes is a correct one. There is no gap between what they know to be right and what they do. They navigate the world with a divine skill. They make perfect use of the preferred indifference when they are present. If a sage has wealth, they will be a master of generosity and stewardship. If they have health, they will use that energy for the common good. But they are equally masterful when these things are absent. Like a master craftsman who can create something beautiful with simple, rough tools as easily as with the finest instruments, the sage can live a flourishing, virtuous life in poverty or sickness just as they can in wealth or health. The materials are indifferent to them. Their art lies in how they use whatever materials are at hand. Now, listening to this description of perfection can feel intimidating. If this is the goal, how can any of us hope to measure up? This is where the Stoics introduced a second odd, deeply compassionate and practical concept, the prokopton. The prokopton is the student, the one who is making progress. This is who we are. We are not sages. We are students on the path, pilgrims on the journey. Our goal is not perfection by tomorrow, but progress today. The student learning a new language does not despair because they are not yet a fluent native speaker. They celebrate the new words they have learned. They practice their grammar, and they accept that they will make mistakes along the way. They keep the ideal of perfect fluency as their guide. But their focus is on the daily work of learning. We are students learning the language of wisdom. Our task is to be a little better today than we were yesterday. A little more patient. A little more courageous. A little more just. The path of the Prokupton is not one of grim self-flagellation over our failures, but one of joyful recognition of our progress, however small. While the perfect sage may be a theoretical ideal, history has given us powerful approximations, figures who came so close to the ideal that their lives became guiding lights for all subsequent generations. Socrates, with his relentless questioning and his commitment to truth even unto death. Cato, with his immovable integrity in a world of corruption. Epictetus, who found perfect freedom and cheerfulness in a life of slavery and exile. These figures are important because they show us that a remarkable degree of tranquility and moral strength is not just a theory. It is achievable for a human being. They are the proof that the path is real and that the journey is worth it. The sage, then, is the beautiful culmination of our entire philosophy. It is the finished cathedral, perfect in its proportions, glowing with an inner light. It is the promise of what we can become if we dedicate ourselves to the craft of living. But we are not the admirers in the pews, looking up at the finished work. We are the masons on the scaffolding, with calloused hands and a blueprint in our pocket. For us, the value and the meaning are found not in the distant dream of the finished cathedral, but in the daily, concrete, and noble work of laying one perfect brick at a time, and focusing on that daily work, on the gritty reality of practice over theory, is the final, essential key to walking the Stoic path. We have journeyed far into the mind, exploring the foundational principles of a philosophy designed not for dusty shelves, but for the chaotic, unpredictable arena of daily life. Yet, a danger lies in this exploration, a subtle trap that has ensnared countless seekers of wisdom. It is the illusion of knowledge, the mistaken belief that to understand a concept is to embody it. Many can quote Seneca. Many can explain the dichotomy of control. Many can nod sagely at the idea of memento mori. They collect these ideas like beautiful, polished stones, admiring their texture and weight in the safety of their own minds. But when the storms of life hit, when the winds of misfortune howl, they find their pockets are full of stones. But they have built no shelter. The map is not the territory, and the blueprint is not the fortress. Stoicism, at its heart, is not a theory to be learned, but a craft to be practiced, a way of being to be lived, diligently, intentionally, every single day. It is an art, and like any art, it demands practice, not just appreciation. Imagine deciding you want to become a concert pianist. You go to the library and read every book on music theory. You study the lives of Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven. You learn to identify a sonata from a fugue. You understand the circle of fifths. You can speak at length about the emotional resonance of a minor key. You know everything about the piano. You can describe its 88 keys, the function of its pedals, the intricate mechanism of its hammers and strings. But you have never sat on the bench. You have never let your fingers, clumsy at first, find their way over the cool ivory. You have never practiced a scale, over and over, until the movement becomes second nature. You have never struggled through a simple piece, your mind racing ahead of your hands, the sound discordant and frustrating. You have never felt the slow, arduous, yet deeply rewarding process of turning theoretical knowledge into living, breathing music. If, after all this study, someone were to push you onto a stage and point to a grand piano, what would you produce? Silence, or perhaps a few awkward, Disconnected notes. You possess the knowledge, but you lack the skill. The knowledge is useless without the practice. This is the precise relationship between understanding Stoic philosophy and living a Stoic life. The books of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca are our music theory, our guides to the great composers of the soul. They show us what is possible, but to produce the music of tranquility and resilience in our own lives, we must sit at the bench every day. We must practice our scales. We must engage in the spiritual exercises that transform abstract ideals into reflexive, instinctual responses. This is not about adding more tasks to an already busy day. It is about weaving a different quality of awareness and intention into the very fabric of the day you are already living. These practices are the tools you use to build your inner citadel, not just admire its architectural plans. Let us begin with the most fundamental and powerful of these practices, the art of journaling. This is not a diary of events, a mere catalog of what you did or who you saw. It is a philosophical logbook, a private training ground for your mind. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. That incredible book that has guided leaders and thinkers for centuries was never intended for publication. It was his private journal, his personal workbook. In it, we see a man, the most powerful man in the world, wrestling with his own thoughts, reminding himself of his principles, coaching himself through his frustrations. This is the model. Each morning, you might take a few moments to prepare for the day ahead. As Seneca advised, you can anticipate the challenges you might face. You can write, "Today I will encounter arrogant people, ungrateful people, envious people. This is not a surprise, for they are ignorant of what is good and evil. But I know the nature of the good, and I will not let their actions stain my own character. They cannot harm me, for no one can force me to act against my own virtue." This is not pessimism. It is preparation. You are preloading your mind with the correct, rational response, so that when the moment arrives, you are not reacting with raw, hijacked emotion, but with practiced wisdom. Then, in the evening, you return to the journal. You conduct a gentle, honest review of your day. As a good manager would review the day's work, ask yourself the questions Seneca posed to himself each night. What fault did I cure today? What vice did I resist? In what way am I better? This is not an exercise in self-flagellation. It is an act of compassionate self-improvement. You note where you were carried away by anger, where you succumbed to anxiety, where you spoke a careless word. You do not judge yourself harshly, but you analyze the trigger, the false belief that led to the disturbance, and you resolve, with calm determination, to do better tomorrow. This daily practice is the equivalent of a musician listening back to a recording, noting the missed notes, and understanding what needs to be corrected. Without this feedback loop, improvement is impossible. The journal becomes your most trusted advisor, a mirror that reflects your inner state with perfect honesty. A second powerful exercise is what is sometimes called the view from above, or Plato's view. This is a practice in perspective, a potent antidote to the poison of self-importance and anxiety. When you feel overwhelmed by a problem, when a conflict at work or a personal slight feels like the center of the universe, stop. Close your eyes. In your mind, imagine yourself beginning to float upwards, rising out of your chair, through the ceiling of your room. See the building you are in, then the street, then your entire city shrinking below. Rise higher still, seeing the contours of your country, the oceans and the continents. Watch the earth itself become a beautiful blue and white marble suspended in the vast, silent blackness of space. Float further, past the moon, past the planets of our solar system, until the sun itself is just another star in the swirling river of the Milky Way galaxy. and see that galaxy become a tiny speck of light among billions and billions of other galaxies in the unimaginable vastness of the cosmos. Now, from this vantage point, from this silent, cosmic perch, try to locate your problem. Try to find the argument you had. Try to see the person who insulted you. They are gone. They have vanished into the sheer scale of existence. Your life, in its entirety, is a fleeting flicker in this immense tapestry. The things that cause us so much stress and anger are revealed to be infinitesimally small. This exercise does not make your problems disappear in reality, but it radically alters your relationship to them. It drains them of their power to dominate your mind. It cultivates a sense of cosmic belonging and humility, reminding you that you are part of a much larger, grand process. It is a direct way to experience the interconnectedness that the Stoics called the sympathia, the universal web of cause and effect. These practices, the journaling and the view from above, are your daily training. They are the scales, the drills, the conditioning. They are what you do when things are calm, so that when the storm arrives, you are ready. When a sudden setback occurs, you have already practiced reminding yourself of what is in your control and what is not. When someone insults you, you have already rehearsed the act of not taking it personally, of seeing it as a reflection of their own ignorance, not your worth. When you feel the grip of anxiety, you have already practiced the mental flight that restores perspective. You do not rise to the occasion in a crisis. You sink to the level of your training. This is why daily practice is not optional. It is everything. To read about Stoicism without practicing it is to read a cookbook and expect to feel full. The nourishment comes not from the reading, but from the preparing, the cooking, and the eating. The peace comes not from the philosophy, but from the philosopher, the one who lives it. So do not simply be a collector of quotes. Be an artisan of the soul. Pick up your tools every day and begin the work of questioning your impressions, the work of preparing for your day, the work of reviewing your progress, the work of expanding your perspective. For it is in this steady, consistent, and often unspectacular daily effort that the true transformation occurs. It is how you turn the jarring noise of a reactive life into the beautiful, resilient music of a soul in harmony with itself and with the universe. This consistent practice is the laying of the very first foundations, the shaping of the very first stones, for the unshakable structure that we will explore next, the inner citadel itself. And so, with these daily practices, you are no longer a mere student of philosophy. You have become a craftsperson. But what exactly are you building? The answer is the ultimate goal of all our study and all our effort. You are building your inner citadel. This is not just a metaphor, it is the most vital construction project of your entire life. Think of yourself as a master mason, a patient builder of a great and silent fortress within your own soul. The world outside is, and always will be, a place of unpredictable storms. The winds of fortune and misfortune will blow without cease. The tremors of changing circumstances, of loss, of betrayal, of unexpected events, will shake the ground. The Stoic does not waste time trying to command the weather. The Stoic builds a fortress so solid, so well designed, so deeply rooted in the bedrock of reason, that the storms may rage outside its walls while peace and tranquility reign within. Each day, you undertake this great work, brick by brick. Do not imagine this as a frantic, hurried construction. The most enduring structures are built slowly, with immense care and precision. What are these bricks? Each brick is a single, conscious act of philosophy in action. When you feel a flash of anger and choose to pause, to breathe, and to question the impression that caused it, you have laid a brick. When you receive bad news and your first instinct is to remind yourself of what is within your control and what is not, you have laid a brick. When you contemplate your own mortality, not with fear, but with a renewed appreciation for the present moment. You have laid a brick. Every journal entry, every morning preparation, every evening review, every moment you choose perspective over panic, virtue over vice, is another solid, perfectly shaped brick being set into place. And what is the mortar that binds these bricks together? That gives the structure its unyielding strength. The mortar is your will, your intention, your unwavering commitment to living a life of excellence and reason. It is the deep understanding that your inner peace is more valuable than any external validation, that your character is your most precious possession. Without this binding mortar, the bricks are just a scattered pile of disconnected actions. With it, they become a seamless, impenetrable wall. Every challenge you face is not a setback to the construction. It is a test of its integrity and an opportunity to reinforce it. When someone insults you, the storm beats against your walls. By responding with calm indifference and understanding, you are not just weathering the storm. You are using its force to see where the wall is strongest. And you are adding another layer of reinforcement through your practiced response. When you face a professional failure, the ground shakes. By focusing on your effort, on the lessons learned, and on the next right action, you are deepening the foundations, making your citadel even more resistant to future tremors. This is why the Stoic can seem to welcome hardship, not because they enjoy pain, but because they know that every difficulty is a chance to practice their craft, to build their character, to add another stone to the fortress. Peace, you see, is not the absence of problems. That is the peace of the graveyard, a peace that does not exist in a vibrant, dynamic life. True peace, the peace of the inner citadel, is the unwavering ability to deal with problems. It is the profound stability that comes from knowing that whatever happens outside, the core of you, the ruling center of your mind, is safe, secure, and under your own command. It is the freedom that comes from realizing that while you cannot control the world, you have absolute sovereignty over your response to the world. This construction project is never truly finished. It is a lifelong process of maintenance, reinforcement, and expansion. There is no final day where you can lay down your tools and declare the work done. Life will always provide new weather, new tests, and new opportunities to build. But with each passing day of practice, the walls grow higher, the foundations sink deeper, and the sense of inner security becomes more profound. You begin to walk through the world, not with a fragile hope that things will go your way, but with a quiet confidence that you can handle them. No matter which way they go, you are building your own sanctuary, a safe harbor in the stormy seas of existence. It is a fortress built not of stone and mortar, but of reason, discipline, and virtue. It is a place no one can ever take from you. A peace no external event can ever truly shatter. This is the ultimate promise of our path, the culmination of all our efforts: a quiet mind, a tranquille heart, an unshakable soul, living in a fortress built by your own hands. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey together. But at the true beginning of yours, we began by drawing a clear line in the sand of our own minds, separating the vast world of things we cannot control from the small, yet all-powerful kingdom of our own choices. The dichotomy of control. We learn to transform the very nature of fate from a relentless tyrant into a willing partner, by not just accepting what happens, but loving it, embracing it as the perfect material for our own growth. Through the principle of amor fati, we stood unflinchingly before the certainty of our own end, using the thought of death, memento mori, not to darken our days, but to fill them with urgency, gratitude, and meaning. And through it all, we held fast to our one true North Star, the understanding that the only true good, the only thing of intrinsic worth, is virtue, the excellence of our own character. These are the tools. This is the blueprint. The core message of this entire exploration is as simple as it is revolutionary. The peace you seek is not a gift that the world will one day bestow upon you when all your problems are solved. It is not an inheritance. It is a construction. The inner citadel is not a place you discover. It is a fortress you build. Through conscious effort, daily discipline, and unwavering awareness. Happiness and stability are not dependent on the shifting sands of the external world. They are an internal state that you alone have the power to create and to maintain. This is not a philosophy of emotional numbness, of becoming a cold, unfeeling statue. It is the very opposite. It is the path to true emotional freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of unnecessary, destructive emotion like rage, panic, and chronic anxiety. It leaves you free to experience the full spectrum of human feeling. Love, joy, and sorrow, but without being enslaved by them. The power to do this is already within you. You are the architect of your own mind. You are the mason of your own soul. Do not wait for a crisis to begin your work. Do not wait until the storm is upon you to look for shelter. Begin today. Begin now. With your very next thought. With your next action. Every choice is a brick. Every breath is a moment to practice. The blueprint is in your hands. The materials are all around you. In the substance of your daily life. The fortress is not somewhere you go to escape the world. The fortress is you.